Welcome everybody to the Four Wide podcast. Hey, look, we're live streaming. That's wild. I did not set the live stream, but we're live streaming apparently on Riverside. So we're all here except for Austin because Austin's a negative Nancy and he had to take a vacation because we've bullied him too much about Logano here in the last few weeks, so he needed a vacation off. So it's a terrible week for him not to be here. It's a terrible week for him not to be here.
Nah, I'm cool with it.
I'm sure Kent's cool with it because he won't have to debate against anybody. He can just say, "My word is God." It is written, so therefore it is.
I speak with that kind of authority on this topic when I say Logano just needs to get his fat rear end out of the way. Anyways, now we'll get into that later. It's neither here nor there. And for Logano, it was also neither on the lead lap. But anyway,
what about you, Blake? What are you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm just chilling, hanging with the homies, man, living the dream.
My man's got a Ross shirt on. Like, what has happened? This is, I swear, I'm running out of hands. How many drivers is this? Let me do my complex equation here.
Been at light this weekend.
Let's do the Pythagorean theorem of Blake's just odd triangulation of just NASCAR drivers he goes back and forth on.
You know, that'd be good if I remembered what the Pythagorean theorem was.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Awesome. I'll take your word. I ain't gonna lie, math started not mathing around 7th grade for me.
Dude, you and me too.
When they started to add the alphabet, I don't remember nothing.
Man, when they told me in high school I could take a business class instead of a math class, I was like, heck yes.
Yeah.
I will.
Do y'all remember when they introduced the concept of imaginary numbers? It's just I stands for an imaginary number. It's wild.
I must not have made it that far. I don't know. Anyways, that or I had already just blocked out. Like I've lost that part of my brain. It's not there anymore.
It's just a wild thing, in all honesty.
All right, guys. So, like I've been telling you for about a month now, we got a really special guest. Pretty excited. Didn't think we'd have a big guest like this for about 4 months into the podcast. Welcome the driver of the number 06 ARCA Menard Series car, Brayton Laster. Brayton, how are you, man?
I am doing fantastic. It's pretty cool. I got to meet some of you guys this past weekend at Charlotte, which we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But pretty neat to go and drive race cars and have fun. And now we're getting to talk to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Well, let's just kind of start out with the basics, Brayton. How did you get into racing? Kind of talk about your background and introduce yourself to our listeners for it.
Yeah, so a lot of people, they might have seen me but not quite recognized, or they're not putting a name to the helmet. That's because I'm more well known for my helmet than I am anything. That's because I have the pepperoni pizza wrapped helmet. A lot of people call me the pizza man. And a lot of that started just back in middle school. I really liked pepperoni pizza. I wore pepperoni pizza jacket all the time. I had shoes, I had a backpack, which I still have multiple backpacks I take to the track every weekend. I just really like pepperoni pizza, and that's as simple as it gets. And so I have my pepperoni pizza helmet, and so I got the nickname the Pizza Man, and it's kind of stuck with me all throughout racing. And getting started in racing, I'm from Indianapolis, and racing obviously is a very, very big deal around here. We had a big race a couple days ago just down the street. Not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it happens every May. Open wheel. Kyle Larson tried to do it, and he didn't succeed very well. Growing up around Indianapolis, obviously racing was a very big deal for me and for my family in general, and so I always grew up going to the racetrack. And then once I was about 8, 9 years old, hopped in go-karts, started racing go-karts, and then moved up to street stocks and four-cylinder, mini stocks. And when I was 15, made a move to dirt. We ran dirt late models for many years around the Midwest. Ran a lot of outlaw figure 8 late models here at the Speedrome, the Indianapolis Speedrome here on the east side of Indy. It's a little bull ring. That's where I did a lot of my racing at growing up, was the Speedrome. It's a quarter or 5th mile bull ring. I got over 200 starts there over the past couple years, and a wide variety of classes. And then 2022 got my first opportunity to race in ARCA at Daytona. It ran with Mullins Racing in the 03. Got 13th in my debut. We went back to Talladega. right at Talladega in spectacular fashion. Had an onboard camera for that. It went pretty spectacular. Unfortunate end of our day, and I thought that was going to kind of be like the end of. To make a long story short, I thought that was going to kind of be the end of my ARCA tenure. Hey, went out on a bang. Literally had a car hit me head on. It flew over me 185 miles an hour. No big deal. And after that, though, have been really putting together race by race, piece by piece, chugging along, doing a lot of the marketing, doing on my own social media, working, different sponsorship deals to try and get a seat. And that's where I was at throughout 2023, 2024. Just kind of taking a journeyman's route. I found, I got a lot more opportunities that way by working with a lot more teams. Teams just they wouldn't have a driver for a week, for a certain week. And hey, we need a driver. We're running full time for points. And so I was the guy that a lot of teams would give a call. Late 2024, I got hooked up with Wayne Peterson Motorsports, who's one of the oldest teams in NASCAR, actually, over 40 years old. So he started out helping out, Richard Petty and Junior Johnson back in the day as a crew guy. Wayne himself is, how old is Wayne now?
He told me he was like 88 at the track.
Yeah, he had his birthday on Thursday or Friday. He's up there.
Yep.
87, 88. He might have turned it. I don't think he knows. He attempted the Daytona 500 back in the early 80s. He didn't make the field. He said, you know what, I'm going to go ARCA racing. And that was pretty much it. Because that's what he did back then. When he didn't make the Cup race, he ran the ARCA race. And so he never really left ARCA. He's been a team owner now for over 40 plus years. He's done a lot of really cool stuff in his life. And, running from a little bit last year, we got him a ninth place finish at Salem, Indiana, which is one of my home tracks. And that ninth place finish was his best finish since 1984 as a team owner with one of his cars. So 40 years. And after that, it was like, hey, let's put something together here. Let's make some magic happen. And some magic happened, and we was able to put together a full-time deal with him this. And it's the first time he's had a full-time driver in many, many, many years. And my first time running a full points tour in anything in a couple years, but especially in ARCA, which is a huge step up from literally anything I've ran, before. We're going to all kinds of different tracks and different styles of tracks and whatnot. So you guys kind of got to experience that firsthand at Charlotte, So that was a pretty cool opportunity for you guys. And it's a pretty neat story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I was looking at your overall website and stuff, and I seen that you were big into like dirt late models at one point in your career. My uncle was a local late model driver. He drove for 20 plus years, and it's a very much a family oriented sport. That's how I always felt like late models, and it's tough to go week to week, track to track, try to make starts, pay for the gas and tires and whatnot. There's a lot of logistical stuff that goes on behind the background that not many people know about. So I would imagine even, on the ARCA scale, it's even more elevated. And that kind of was showcased through your start at Charlotte this weekend and had multiple things that didn't go, the way that it was planned. So maybe just talk about your weekend in general, and talk about all the complications that happened this weekend.
That was a good tie in there with the delayed mile stuff, because back when we've always been a very budget racers. We've never raced a level where we thought we could win. We just kind of raced a level where it made sense, and by making sense, that means, hey, we might spend $400 or $500 getting to the racetrack, but pays $1,000 to start. So we're not trying to do where we spend $500 to get a track and it pays $100 to win. We're trying to kind of break even ish here if we can. And it was a business for a lot. Obviously, it didn't pay the bills, but allowed us to keep racing. We'd go out here and have fun. And we did a lot of stuff on a budget. We ran used tires where we could. We ran second, third, hand-me-down parts where we could. And going to ARCA, I've always kind of had the standard of, hey, we're not here to win. We're just kind of here for business, and we're here to have fun. And I get to be in a race car and get to drive fast. And so I knew going into the season that's kind of how it was going to be. Wayne, our budget is less than $5,000 a race. For some of the bigger teams, it's $125,000 per race.
Wow.
The car we ran past weekend was built in 2016. It was a brand new car for us, which we'll kind of tie that into the struggles a little bit. The next newest car in Wayne's garage is probably from 2003, 2004. And so, like, a lot of cars that we run are actually older than I am, and sometimes even the motors are older than I am. Like, we're still running Dodge motors, so it's kind of a throwback there. And we got this car over the off season, and Wayne was kind of looking to make some upgrades, and this car was one of the upgrades we planned to kind of make throughout the season, and we weren't really sure when we were going to debut it, and as we kind of got closer to building it, putting it together, we said, hey, Charlotte would be a good one. We were coming off of Phoenix, or we're coming off of Talladega in late April and Kansas in early May. It was just a couple weeks there to kind of focus solely on this car before we get into the summer months, because the summer months are grueling for ARCA. It's boom, 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 starting at Michigan next week, and you have a couple weeks off after that, but then it's 3 or 4 races again back to back, versus where the first 5 races have been spread out over 3.5 months. So, it gets very serious very quickly. So we wanted to make sure this car debuted though at Charlotte. And from the get-go, we had issues. The car was in Charlotte, getting put together, getting built by one of the top guys there. And then we brought it back to Wayne Shop. Wayne Shop is in Pulaski, Tennessee. It's about an hour south of Nashville, kind of by Huntsville. That's so the Tennessee-Alabama border. It's about 7 or 8 hours from Charlotte, so we don't make that trip very often. And I'm from Indianapolis, so I make the trip to Pulaski very often. I don't make the trip to Charlotte, and Wayne very rarely makes the trip to Charlotte unless he absolutely has to. So we were supposed to get the car back, a couple weeks ago, around Kansas. That way we had time to get it ready. That was the plan. Well, the team didn't get the car back until Monday morning, Monday afternoon. And that was, the first, like, hey, we're getting this car back a lot later than we would have liked. And we were supposed to get the car back, completely race ready, drive on the trailer, throw tires on it, be good to go. And of course, you never quite get that lucky. And so there was a lot of like small stuff I had to button up, and at least a lot of the setup. The setup was spot on, and the hard part was done. I was just kind of doing, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. But the problem was, is there were a lot of T's and a lot of I's, and that small stuff when you don't have 25 guys dedicated to one car. So the team. Wayne lives in basically what you'd call a mobile home, I guess, and he has a 2-car garage built onto it, and that's the race shop. Is that 2-car garage? And he just leaves cars like in the trailer, kind of at a neighbor's house in his garage, because he has 4 or 5 cars. And we have one full-time employee, and that's Nate Muller, my crew chief, who also does a lot of driving on the side, but he lives with Wayne too. So that is the only person really putting the race cars together every week, and it's a matter of who shows up from what. Obviously Wayne's made a lot of friends over the years, so he's got people that would just drop in for a couple of days and just help put race cars together. And they got the car back, and like it's a lot of tiny stuff, and it was a lot to ask for just one person with Nate going over everything. And he lucked out some help from Rodney, who lives down there, is a local to Pulaski, and he's been helping Wayne out for a couple of years now. And we went down Wednesday morning. We left Wednesday morning, and we picked up a wrap. We had a really awesome patriotic Memorial Day themed wrap we were going to put in the car. We picked it up, and we went down. We got to Pulaski early Wednesday afternoon, and like the plan was, the car would have been done hopefully by Wednesday, morning. We spent all of Wednesday afternoon wrapping the car because, like I said, only 3 or 4 of us, none of us really have experience in this field, so we're just gonna kind of play it by ear and take our time with it. And when we got there, I'm kind of keeping tabs with the team and with Nate, and said, hey, like, we're on our way. Hey, we're going to be here at this time. And I could tell, like, hey, like, he's busy. He's not really responding a whole lot. And I kind of knew we got the car back a little late. I just didn't know, like, what had to be done to it. And, like, when I got there, I was like, oh, boy. Like, when you start, like, looking at this and looking at that, they have a list. They had a giant piece of, like, wrapping paper, literally, like, about a 2-foot long piece of paper, and there was a list, and there was probably 50, 60 items on this list, and like half of them are crossed off. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be a fun night. It's gonna be a really fun night. And most of the stuff on that list wasn't even like anything to, like, obviously I want to be comfortable in the car, and I always tell them, let me worry about the driver comfort stuff. So like I'll get down there, I'll worry about the seat, I'll worry about where the dash, the steering wheel is. Like I'm very hands on. I've worked on my own stuff for many years. I work as a fabricator up here in Indianapolis. So like I can fix or I can adjust that stuff. Like you guys don't worry about that. Like that list was purely just getting the race car where it can get onto the track and stay on the track. We sat there, for hours, 3 or 4 of us kind of doing this, crossing this off the list, and then doing that, crossing off the list, and we do this, but oh wait, we can't do this till we do this, and we got to undo this, and it was one of those, and got to about 3 o'clock in the morning, Thursday morning, and we had to be at the track by 2 p.m. Thursday for loading. Well, we called ARCA, said, hey, this isn't happening. Like, we will not be there for loading. And part of it is to normally do loading like that morning, so the race is Friday, do loading like 8 o'clock Friday morning. But because most people are local to Charlotte, they had the day before, which, for us, a team that's 8 hours away from Charlotte made it a little inconvenient. So our coach was like, hey, that's fine. You guys can get here Friday morning. And so we sat there, Thursday morning, and we're like, hey, we're going to get some sleep. And me and my girlfriend Shelby went with me. We left Pulaski, so Wayne's shop. We left the shop, and we started heading towards Charlotte. That morning, we got drove for a couple hours, and then we pulled in and rested. And the team's plan was they were going to load up and leave Thursday morning. They had a couple things they had to button up. We got the car almost done, and they were going to leave Thursday before noon. Sam was then get there 8 o'clock Thursday night, unload it at another team shop that we were friends with, and wrap the car in their parking lot. Well, they kind of went to go button that one thing up, button this up, get the truck trailer ready. They didn't leave till early afternoon Thursday, and they didn't even get there until Friday morning around 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was a lot of just getting the car ready. Once we got the car on track, it set up, like I said, first time out, kind of missed it a little bit, but you got that, that side skirts, the valence, everything kind of like formed to the track like you're going to be scraping. It was very bumpy, very rough, came in multiple times. Hey, let's fix this. Hey, let's change this. Went out for qualifying. We still missed it a little bit, but we were a lot closer where we needed to be. Went out for the race. We had to go to the tail because we had a radiator leak after qualifying that we discovered. So we patched that up, and that was an unapproved adjustment. Went out for the race. We were running really well, just around the 20th position. We blew a right rear tire. Like, great, and actually a four-wheel drifted through 1 and 2, got to the apron, got around pit lane, got it fixed, and by that point, we're already 2 or 3 laps down from where we were, so that kind of sucked. And then a couple laps later, we blew a right front tire. I was like, oh, this is fantastic, and what's funny about that, though, is on my way in, there was debris on the apron. And I didn't see it till last second. I hit the debris, and I shot it up the track. I got a caution. That point, though, already lost another couple laps from the right front going down. And then we had the big one, the wreck, with Cletus up there in the front row.
Yep.
That one was crazy. We drove through the grass to avoid it. And somehow, some way, after that, my ignition switch had caught on fire driving through the grass. And so now we're on fire inside the car. This is fantastic, We get that fixed up where that's not going to be an issue anymore. And we went and we finished the race. And also on top of all that, my water system, I have a drinking pack in the car that broke, I guess you can say, lap 1. So I had no water throughout the entire race. And it wasn't too hot, but it was like our first hot race that we've done. And then also we had some leaks in the firewall that we quite haven't sealed up yet. Like I said, just trying to get the car ready and everything, and thought we'd be okay. And so I was getting some lovely carbon monoxide. Basically, the last 20 laps, I was talking to team afterwards, and like I didn't remember where I was at. All I was doing was driving a race car and just going. I couldn't. I could hear my partner talking, but I couldn't really make out like what he was saying. And had the race been an extra 5 or 10 laps, like I would have just been done. So got out, we got checked out by the medical crew. They said, hey, just catch your breath, get some water, some fluid, you'll be fine. And so luckily I'm fantastic now. It took me a
Great.
day or two to
It's
get
good news for
rested up.
sure.
Yeah, it was a long weekend. A long week.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like it.
Man.
Go ahead, Kent. I know you're sitting on something that you really want to ask.
Yeah, so I love hearing your side of the story because for the race fan, we show up at the track, right? Like we show up the day of, and we see essentially cars driving in circles, and we're like, okay, awesome, I was entertained. I'm going to go home now. But you don't hear what all goes into it for that to happen, and so I love hearing about all of that. So you mentioned y'all have got a few cars back at the shop, and I know that a lot of them, you said that some of them were even older than you.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is a crazy concept for you. Is there any chance, and this is just me, kind of being a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. Is there any chance that I know sometimes, the chassis that get used in the ARCA series were old Cup cars.
Yep.
Y'all got any old Cup stuff?
So almost all of our stuff is old Cup stuff. So I drove a black car. I post this every week too on Twitter at the One Pizza Man. So I will pull it up here really quickly. I know our Kansas car is an old Bill Davis car, and it's the one that Ward Burton.
Austin's favorite driver, Ward Burton.
That's awesome.
Like we have, I post it every week on my Twitter. Like on a here's a test number, and if I know the race information, like I'll post the race information. If not, then normally someone has it. So Bill Davis Racing 65 debuted in Bristol of 2003. It was when Ward Burton wrecked Kyle Petty. It ran for multiple races throughout 2004, 2007. And then Wayne got it in 2020ish, and he's been running at intermediate tracks. And the car actually still has the original Bill Davis Racing dash. So we have an old Chip Ganassi with Sabco car from like 2001, 2002. And that one actually has a Dodge motor in it from around the same era as well. Our Super Speedway car is an old Ganassi car, I believe. And the car that we ran at Charlotte this is the only non-cup car in their stable. And it's funny because the crew guys were looking at it and said, hey, this doesn't look like the cup car we have in our shop, because it's a 2016, so they thought it was a Gen 6, but actually it was purpose-built by Martin McClure Racing in 2016 for Chad Fincham, and Chad Fincham won the K&N East race at Bristol with it in 2016 with Martin McClure Racing. So we have all that. I've driven an old Robert Yates car, an old like Super Speedway Robert Yates car, the 38 M&M Talladega car from 2007, 2008, I believe. I've driven that. I've driven an old Clint Boyer All-Star car. I've driven an old Darrell Waltrip chassis.
Sick.
It's like awesome.
That's
So
that's
like,
stinking cool.
and like that there, Darrell retired and gosh, 1990 something.
I think 99 he might have run his
99,
last race.
yeah.
I could be wrong. Fact check me on that, but
Yeah, it's 99. You know, that car there is a 99, 98 car I've driven.
wow.
And so, like, I always try to find the chassis information of the cars that I drive, and I
Yeah.
have them all. When you start
That's
talking
so
about that, I
cool.
knew exactly where you were going. And I'm a huge, like, nerd myself when it comes to that. So I always like
I
to know
hear
the
you.
history behind it. Actually, I reached out to Chad Fincham, who obviously, you know, kind of made his name for being one of the, you know, the smaller tier Xfinity guys. And he's, you know, he comes and goes. And you know, it was his first K&N or NASCAR win ever. That obviously means a lot to someone like Chad. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, we have your Bristol winning car here. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yes, I'm sure. And I got the chassis number. I figured out who built it. It was someone that built late model chassis and like K&N ARCA chassis. And I reached out to them on Facebook. And they were still active. And the guy called me. He's like, I remember building that car. It's a one of one. We never built anything like it. We built it just for Bristol. And you know they went out and they won it. And they sent me pictures of it getting built. He sent me like the original setup sheet. We have the original setup sheets on our Ronnie Hopkins chassis, which they built the Ganassi cars. We have these setup sheets on those, like the original ones from the jig and everything, and how they were built. So we have a ton of information back from 25, 30 years ago. And we can't really use a whole lot of it now per se, but if we ever have to go back and if I wreck the car beyond repair or beyond like reasonable repair, we have to reclip it. We have these setup sheets on, hey, this frame rail was mounted up a little like this or like that, or hey, this we're looking for this angle on that, or here's this ideal ride height for that. So we have that information to go off of, which is really really cool. That some of that paperwork and that information has survived 2+ decades.
Yeah, so cool.
Crazy. The history and stuff that goes into stuff. And one thing, I don't know, it kind of, when I was on, obviously on the grid and everything, and I was just watching everything, it very much has that old school vibe of NASCAR to it. If there's a series out there that is old school, it's the ARCA series, because you see, your fellow drivers are helping you out, you're borrowing parts from each other, tools and whatnot, whatever you can to scrape by. Even, we were talking about Wayne earlier, and Wayne's got this pair of jeans on. It's got oil, dirt, grime. And like we said, he's 88, 87 years old. And I mean, he's down there working on them cars just like he was in his younger days. So it's very much like going back in time almost. And that's really cool to hear that you're still driving, historic chassis, cars and stuff around the track.
And that's the thing too, is like a lot of ARC, especially like the back half field, a lot of us still work throughout the week. I'm a welder and I fabricator up here in Indianapolis, so like that pays the bills. I'd love to say that I get to race NASCAR for a living. It helps a little bit here and there, but I get to drive a race car though. That's what's the coolest part about that. And some of the guys up front though are they're born into to NASCAR families or NASCAR money, a lot of them, and they're able to go and say, hey, Paul, I need, $1.5 million for, this ride here and there. And I'm not blaming them for it. I would do the exact same thing if I was in their shoes.
Yeah.
But, they know they're going to be racing in NASCAR, from a young age. And that's kind of like their life goal. From the age of 3 or 4, they start working out and they start, hopping in race cars and doing this and that. Always was like a hobby racer that kind of, like I said, we raced where we could, where it made sense to race. I never expected to be able to race at this level, especially so. Like I never raced. I never expected. I never obviously I wanted to race in NASCAR growing up. I never really had a pathway. Never had a plan. Some of these guys, like I said, they hit 3 or 4 years old, and it's, hey, here's a plan from so and so Cup team. We got it broken down. They're gonna run this many races a year at this track and this class. And then when you turn 10, you're gonna run this race. You're gonna turn 15, and when you turn 16 and 17, 18, and then by the time they're 18 years old, you're in the Xfinity series running full time.
So like Brexton Bush kind of esque, how Kyle's planning, everything out for him. I can get that for sure. That's a good point. It honestly is.
Like from school, they don't go to school. Like they go to middle school online. They have an online program that North Carolina made, like especially for motorsports kids and like athletic kids that are like obviously traveling a lot. And that's why you see a lot of these guys like Braxton Bushlow racing in, Las Vegas throughout the week, or racing in, South Carolina or Georgia or Alabama or Indiana or wherever. There's a lot of kids though that they're 15, 16 years old and they're racing 120 times a year. Said I would have loved to have done that when I was 15 or
Yeah,
16.
for sure.
So I'm not gonna be mad at them for it, but some of them like they know what the plan is. So ARCA for them is kind of a teeny tiny stepping stone. They might run 5 races, might run 10 races, and then move on to trucks. Versus you got guys like Brad Smith, who's been at ARCA for over 400 starts, or Wayne, who's been a team owner for over 40 years. Wayne actually raced ARC up until a couple years ago.
Wow.
So he raced, I think, up until 2021, 22 ish.
Oh, wow. It's like Red Farmer esque, kind of how
Yeah.
Red Farmer is these days. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And Brayton, I did want to ask you, so obviously you said you're a budget team, and you were talking about like as you were kind of paving your way to this full-time season, you would go where it makes sense. What are some reasonable expectations or some goals that you have for your team and for overall? And what are some maybe 2 or 3 tracks that you've got circled on the schedule where you're looking like, hey, I think we could make some good gains here?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we run a lot of like older equipment, and obviously we're got a lot of second, third hand stuff. A lot of the top teams are using wind tunnels and pull down rigs. We don't really have that. Our version of a wind tunnel is you put a fan in front of the car and we stand in between the car and the fan. Of course, that was all off. We don't really have access to a lot of the top technology. Also we're outmotored. A lot of these teams have top of the line motors, and they're getting an extra 50, 60 horsepower. A big track we obviously are going to struggle a lot on. It's a short track that we have circled that say, hey, we can go out here and we can compete here, 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 here. And we're just going to be at the track here and here. The plan is to survive here, here, here. And we don't really know about these tracks. And we don't know tracks like the road courses. So we think we'll have an okay road course set up. I'm not a very good road course driver. I think I'm better than some of the guys, but probably not most of them. Because there's some people that I think are more terrified of road courses than I am. So I did walk into the Nashville, and that was rough. And a big part, though, for us, though, just making it to the finish. And we've done a really, really good job of that. I've only had one DNF this year that was at Daytona. Had a mechanical issue that set us back. And outside of that, though, like we've had mechanical issues throughout the season, but we haven't had an issue that's ended a race early for us outside of Daytona. So we've had 4 really strong finishes. Now they're not finishes where we should have been. Talladega was one where we lost a lot of points. We had an issue right at the drop of the green flag. The car shut off. I had to coast, and we spent 25 laps in pit lane getting it fixed. So, I started the race 25 laps down, and, all the big wrecks happened in the second half of the race with 20 to go, and so we don't make spots from that. So we finished pretty, like 34th or 35th at Talladega.
Yeah.
So that one was a huge blow to points, but we're slowly kind of crawling our way out of that. We're within 10, 15 points of teams that are spending, the 80, 90, $100,000 per week.
Wow.
And it's just because we're able to be more consistent. No, we're not going out here and win the championship, but I think if we can, I was looking at the points lineup, and we think we can be. We're going to be in a battle from 7th to 11th. There's 4 teams that are really, really small teams that we're going to be in a very heated points battle with. And if we can be the first, second, those teams we're really happy. And right now, though, we're actually within a couple points of teams that are 3rd and 4th place caliber teams. They're just having a very sloppy start to the season, and we're not sure, hey, are they going to stay down here, or are they going to start putting together some really solid finishes? And that's kind of what we're trying to. We know we can at least score 7th place in points. We'd like to ideally finish, 6th or even 5th, or rookie of the year honors would be pretty cool. And that the end goal for us is to make it to the track and leave the track with a car in one piece, and then we'll kind of see where the points stack up from there. Like I said, we've left a lot of points on the table with mechanical issues, but we're bringing the car home in fairly one-ish piece for the most part.
I'd imagine Bristol's probably one that you definitely have circled, having that car that won the K&N race, right?
Yes.
That'd be one I'd be really excited for. That's going to be a really good race for you. You would hope.
And we're on that car too, so
Yeah,
Yes, that
that's the
would be pretty
plan for
cool.
sure.
And the dirt tracks, ARCA, we actually raced 2 dirt tracks in ARCA. We raced in Springfield and DeQuoin, Illinois. So they're mile dirt tracks. They're horse tracks. It's like what you see at your fairgrounds.
Yeah.
So we go and we race there, and obviously my dirt background, we've had a lot of really good runs there. I got a couple top 10s a couple years ago for Rise Motorsports, and that's one thing though about being like a journeyman is I didn't race for Wayne until late last year. I did 2 races. I ran Indianapolis Raceway Park, being my home track, and Salem, which is another track we have circled because I have 2 top 10s there, and actually they're both 9th place finishes, and they're both my best career place finishes. So we have that circled, obviously. I really like Salem, and they're obviously it's fairly close to home as well. But the dirt tracks are 2 that we have circled just because we always seem to really outperform there. And we ran top 10 there on pace last year before we had an issue, and then had another issue at DeQuoin as well. So, we got top 10 to 2023 last year. I think we should have had a couple more, but I have experienced a wide variety of different tracks with different teams. And so, I ran Charlotte in 2023. I ran Kansas last year with the Rise, and there's like Michigan's a track that I've never been to. That's what's coming up next. Bristol's a track that I've never been to, so they're going to be very intimidating the first time I go out there on track, and it's going to be a big learning curve. I'm definitely going to try to make the most of practice for those tracks. But the more and more I run, the more comfortable I think that I'll be. So Dover's another track where I'm looking forward to it. I really like the high bank tracks like Salem, because Salem is 32 degrees banking. Dover is very abrasive though, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to like that or deal with that. And that would be a big learning curve for us.
Sure. So I know Kent probably wants to ask about like the sim portion of it, especially with making those starts at tracks that you don't know. That's probably a really useful tool to have. So I'll let Kent kind of phrase that because I know he's wanting to ask something about that.
Yeah, so in 2019, I bought an old computer from a friend, and a $19.99 Xbox controller, and I got on iRacing for the first time and quickly realized that a steering wheel was going to be worth the investment. I have the closest experience that I have to anything like what you do is riding shotgun in the NASCAR experience at Daytona. Which for me, I'm sitting there thinking like I'm gonna pass out in the corners because I can't breathe. Just the forces throwing me back in the car. I just was not prepared. It was just the coolest thing ever. But driving in iRacing, how much of that discipline carries over to the real thing, or would you say that sometimes it hurts you more than it helps you?
It definitely never hurts me. I'll say, it's hard to get close. Like you mentioned, the feeling in the car is something that you can't replicate, and that's the big thing that I just have to kind of rely on my experience of racing to kind of try and simulate that. But I use iRacing very religiously for practicing for a track, especially if it's a track that I've never been to. I'll run a lot of races throughout the week. I'll watch a lot of videos. I'll work with different driving coaches. And so with that, like Watkins Glen is a track that last year I made, my first ever road course start at Watkins Glen last year. And like I said, it was a little rough. It could have been a lot more slow, I promise you that. So I spent hundreds and hundreds of laps, or I had hundreds of laps around Watkins Glen. I worked with a lot of SCCA, driving coaches on iRacing and stuff like that, and they teach you tricks and like, hey, there's like this little bump right here going through turn one, like it drops here and then it goes up here. Do you want to try to get it right here before you get back up to the bump and do this and that, and little tricks that apply in real life that also work in iRacing, or just kind of this feel for iRacing. So going to a new track for the first time, I always try and do a lot of laps to kind of learn turning points, breaking points, bumps on the track. That Irish does a great job at, when they go into the edge scan. Hey, you can tell this is going to be a lot bumpy in real life, especially if it's bumpy on iRacing. It's going to be pretty bumpy in real life. So that's a big thing that I try and use. Obviously, it won't get me used to, going in the car and feeling the car, hearing the car squeaks or squeal and, burning out my tires or something like that. But getting just comfortable to the track is a big aspect of it.
I know a lot of people this weekend were complaining about how rough Charlotte was, how abrasive it was. It's kind of aged just like that. Of course, I've never drove on the track before, but you can just kind of see the natural progression of it. It just gets more and more rough as it ages, just like any other racetrack. But I'd imagine that your back was a little bit sore once you got out of the car, along with your, of course, you said your ignition switch and everything was going on. You had a lot going on those last 20, 30 laps in the old head. So I'd imagine that the track felt pretty rough this weekend for you.
And that was something like I ran Charlotte in 2023, and it was a lot rougher this time than I remember. I don't know if I just didn't remember correctly or a whole lot. And it was a lot rougher than what I imagined based off of my iRacing practice as well. I knew 3 was going to be pretty rough, and it was pretty rough. Phoenix is a track that the dog leg that it doesn't prepare you for how rough it actually is. So I practiced cutting a dog leg a lot, and that's something in real life that you sit there and when they're going to take it, you brace yourself. Like you almost like want to close your eyes because it's coming, but obviously you're driving a race car 160 miles an hour. It's very hard not to, and that was the one thing this year, especially because our practice and qualifying got rained out. So I had to rely almost solely on the iRacing practice, and it took me a while to kind of get the hang of it. And my fastest lap of the race was like with 10 to go or something. So we struggled a little bit there speed wise, and it was because I didn't have practice or qualifying to go off of. And the dog leg is so rough in person. Like I'm surprised drivers don't have concussions from it. I'd like to see data, honestly. Of I don't know if anyone's worn a mouthpiece at Phoenix that detects G's, but I would bet it is comparable to hitting the wall. Is how rough the dog like I had a headache for days after Phoenix.
And that's like a necessity for a lot of drivers. That's a lot of maneuverability right there on that dog leg. That's what that track's really known for. So that's crazy that it's so tough on the body.
Well, and I know the track's going on 14 years on a repave too. It ain't your smoothest track already, but man. And see, I'm glad you said it because as a fan, I never would have thought. I mean, it looks so smooth on TV, right? Because y'all are so good at like what you do. But I'm glad you
We
said.
try to be.
I never would have thought that. I did have a question. I was doing some research and I saw that your parents run a nonprofit in the Indianapolis area or something like that. What is it? How can people support it?
Yeah, so that is called Drive for Humanity. I mean, they're technically on it, but I do 99.99% of the work with that. Basically, our mission is to kind of help raise awareness or raise funds to help or raise goods or funds that help out those in need, whether it's those that are unhoused and on the street or those that just can't put food on the table, or it might be they had an issue in their life where we've worked with a particular family like out of Cincinnati where their house burnt down and they had 5 or 6 kids, and none of the kids had any clothes. So we sat here and got a ton of clothes together from our community and donated them hundreds of clothing items. We tried to do with 2025, obviously Indianapolis the greatest city wealth wise, and there's a lot of people that are just kind of down on their luck, and a lot of people that are unhoused, and especially in winter, it gets very rough up here in the winter. And so I always try and go out and hand out food items or clothing items like gloves, mittens, socks, hats, beanies, jackets, whatever I can. Propane is a big thing that we hand out because a lot of them have heaters and they just don't have any way to power set heaters. We try to do a lot with that, but in 2025 or up until 2025, it's always been around Indianapolis. It was kind of something we did, and I was like, hey, there's no reason why we can't do this on a lot bigger national scale with racing full time this year, and we're having a consistent schedule. We can kind of go and we can plan stuff. That's one thing too. Is like in previous years, there were a handful of races where I would get a call on Tuesday and the race was Thursday. Where our team would need a driver, so like I didn't have a whole lot of consistency in my schedule. Running the full schedule this year, we have a lot more consistency of knowing when we're going to be racing and where. So with that, I was like, hey, I want to kind of sit here and do some the nonprofit stuff. And so every track we've gone to, we have attempted to do a food drive where it might just be, hey, we're gonna be here from this time to this time. Feel free to come by. I'll give you an autograph. I'll give you a trading card. I'll give you a sticker. Or might be we're gonna set up like donation bins around the track. That's what we did for Talladega. We had 4 or 5 donation bins around different campgrounds that people could donate stuff to. And we then partner with a local food bank, and we will take those items to a food banker. I'll reach out to them ahead of time, be like, hey, what do you guys need most right now? Do you need clothing items? Do you need shoes? Do you need diapers? Baby formula? And so the one at Talladega is a place called Samaritan House, and I'll always try to reach out to a different person from that area as well that's involved in race and be like, hey, do you know any do you know any food banks? Do you know any people or any shelters that take in people, or do you know any families that just need help right now? And that way it's someone or something that has like a tie to the racing community. So we had, I think, over 300 different canned or food items for our Talladega shelter that we donated to, and they're right there in Talladega. It's a place called Samaritan House. We actually had them on the hood of the car as well. So that's one thing we try to do is raise awareness for these local places. And so our hood sponsor backed out a little last second, and we said, hey, we have this local food bank, and we're going to throw them on a car, help raise awareness. But we always will try to have a small stick on the car somewhere. And so Charlotte, we did Hope Street Food Bank, I believe it was called. We donated a couple canned food items to them and made a financial contribution to them. Daytona, we had one where we actually had a fun meet and greet where people came by and dropped off and got a lot of cool donations for that. Phoenix wasn't quite as doable. We didn't do a food drive there just because one, traveling logistics, and then the weather obviously wasn't good at all. But we still worked with the local food bank out there. We had them on the car and made donated, I think, 125 canned items to them. So we try to make a difference, at every track we go to.
Nice, because I was going to ask how. My follow-up question, you already answered it in part, but how can people support Drive for Humanity? Obviously going to the racetrack, but is there any way else that
Yeah.
Yep.
So driveforhumanity.org is just the website. We have a donate link on there. If you want to donate, you can do a financial contribution there. And also, when you do that, you are able to pick a track that you would like to do. To go to our 2025 mission, we have different tiers and rewards. So if you donate $5, you get your name on the rear trunk lid. If you donate $25, you get your name on the lower quarter panel, or kind of up on the BC pillar. Or you can even have it where you get a logo on the car and pit passes for different tiers of donating. So the easiest is obviously doing a financial contribution. You can get your name on a track that you'll be at, and then also we'll kind of allocate some of those funds towards helping out that track locally. Another thing, like we said, every track we always try to do a canned food drive. As soon as I figure out, a lot of details normally are figured out fairly last second, but once we know, hey, here's what we're doing or how we're doing it, I'll try and push it social media. People reach out to me all the time, like, hey, we have, we cleaned our pantry, we got a bag of goods. And, it can be 3 or 4 items, but you get those 3 or 4 items times, 10 people, that's 40 items. So that makes a huge difference. And so driveforhumanity.org, we have our full schedule on there where I'll be racing at, where we'll be making, these different contributions across various tracks and cities and what.
Nice.
So not only are you a great driver, you're a great person. Is what I'm hearing.
I try to be,
Yeah, I hear you. That's great. What about you, Kent? I'm sure you're sitting on something else. You're stewing over there. Kent's very much a historian, guys. You can count on a good question coming from him most of the time.
Man, you put me on the spot.
That's
It
the
was
point.
just stuff floating around up here. No, I guess racing that a lot of people don't see. Again, like we just talked, like you have so much that goes into it before you ever get to the track. There's so much that goes into it that maybe a lot of other drivers don't do. If that makes, especially like at the
Yes.
cup level and that
Yes.
sort of thing, you're way more hands on than the majority of the guys that you're going to see at the track. I would feel like any given time. And so you've got this nonprofit. You help with. It sounds like you help wrap the cars. You help make sure that the cars are ready to go and that sort of thing. I'm confident that and I'm looking forward. I'm hoping I'm able to make it to one of these races and hang out. But it sounds like you're around the car, getting it ready, and of course, practicing it, getting it where it's ready to go on Friday night or whatever it is that weekend that y'all race. How do you balance everything? It sounds like you've got 8 full-time jobs. So how do you balance everything? Because it sounds crazy, but it seems like you're obviously doing a good job with it.
That's what I mean. It really is, and like I do all my own marketing. I don't have anyone that helps me with that really, and versus some drivers have full teams that just work around that driver that have 4 or 5 people for marketing. I do all my own social media. I do all my own I do all my own posts. I do all my own talking to sponsors, and a big part of that is Facebook. I do a lot of like advertising on Facebook for sponsorship and working people there, and I'll get 20 or 30 messages a day over there from 20, 30 people a day that I'm carrying out all those conversations and doing podcasts. Hey,
Yeah.
talking to people on email. I think our email chain is 23, 25 emails deep, and it's putting logos on and figuring out, hey, this logo has to go here for this race. I wish I was more hands-on directly with the car stuff. Getting the car ready, it's about a 4.5 hour drive to the team shop. I go down as much as I can, but for like the late mile stuff, even I'm still very hands-on with that as we race those in the off weeks. And I build our own motors for that, or we might have one other guy that kind of helps us with that. Working here as a welder and fabricator, that is my big focus, and working out as well a couple times a week, which I'd like to go every day. I mean, it is waking up at 8 or 9 o'clock, which might even be too late. But I'm not going to bed most nights until 1 or 2 in the morning because
Same.
I'll get home from work at about 6 or 7 o'clock if I'm lucky, and the evening is all about messaging people back, sending more emails, figuring out logo placements, decals, ordering shirts, which, hey, new Brayton NASA shirts are available over at braytonnasa.com under shop. We'll be working on a Charlotte shirt soon. That was a tough one to say. Like I said, it's literally like 8 full-time jobs, and one, my girlfriend Shelby helps out a ton with that, so she helps out with a lot of my hero cards, a lot of my shirt orders. She's very involved as well. Second thing, like a lot of drivers, they get to the track, and that's all they have to worry about is getting. Most of them, they don't have to worry about getting themselves to the track. They just, hey, airplane's leaving from here at this time, show up there, and we're good. I drive myself to the track every week, like Phoenix. I drive myself out to Phoenix. That was a 30-hour drive.
Sheesh.
So, we get to the track, and sometimes we're putting decals on right before the race even. I think, Blake, you saw that. We were sitting there throwing decals on the car literally up until tech was over.
Yeah.
And we added decals after qualifying and before the race. And Shelby always does a good job at kind of one keeping my head on a swivel because she's in charge, like where all my stuff is. Like I'll just come into the track, I'll get in the trailer, I'll put my stuff somewhere and forget where it's at. And so she does a good job of kind of keeping hands on. And I'm like, hey, where are my keys at? That's something that I've done. It's like I'll leave my, like it would take a multi-day show. I'll leave my keys in the trailer. The garage area would close. I'll walk out the parking lot, get in my car, and I don't have my keys. Shelby helps me out a ton with a lot of that. But, like I said, it's very hard to balance. It's very stressful. I was telling the team this past weekend, we're 5 races in the season. I feel like I've ran 25 races. It's because it's so nonstop. It's organizing pit credentials for sponsors and writing out press releases and tell people where they have to be, what they can't do, how to do this, how to get that. And like I said, it is literally non-stop. Like, I very rarely have just kind of me time. And, that's just a part of it at this level. I want to race at this level, and that's a big part of it, being with a smaller team. And, I'm just gonna keep racing at this level as long as I can. That might be next year, and that might be until I'm new 65. So hopefully one day I get a call from a big team or big organization, and a lot of those issues kind of go away. But until then, I'm gonna keep doing what I have to do to continue to race.
Yeah.
I think what helps you so much is not only you marketable, but you're just a nice guy. You're a genuine guy, and you just ooze like authenticity, if that makes sense to you, right? There's a lot of these drivers, even on the upper level, that you look at them and they're like, you kind of look at them and you're like, they don't look like they want to be here, But you're about to go racing at a NASCAR, one of the most prestigious organizations out there. So it's like, why not be excited? I think your marketing and your authenticity really shows through, and I think that you will get a call one day because you're just a likable guy, and that's a really important part, especially these days. I mean, there's some drivers out there that are not that likable, and they suffer through sponsorships and whatnot. And then you got people out here wanting to be on your car week to week, different people, all these different organizations, racing leagues, even just normal people just want to be a part of a part of your life, in all honesty. So I find that really cool. So I don't think that's really a question. I think that's just a long comment.
When I back off that, I think it's really cool too because Kent, Austin, Cole, and I, we obviously don't come from like tons and tons of money, right? But it was, but the way that you have it set up, like some average guys like us can be on the car for a race, and it's like we're living the dream. It's like we kind of know like Cup and Xfinity and all that's out of the question, but if we can go and be on an ARCA car, like heck yeah, like that's awesome.
And to get the full experience with it, to get to sit there and like working with that's something like I work with a lot of smaller, organizations, smaller groups of people, where and part of it though is like I'm a lot more approachable versus like Kyle Larson. Like you can pay $50,000 to be on Kyle Larson's B pillar, and he'll walk up and he'll give you a handshake, and that's it.
Yeah.
With ARCA, and that's another part of like balancing everything out is I'll have 15 people at the track. Sometimes Daytona, especially Talladega, especially. You're talking 40-ish people sometimes that want to come and hang out for those races, and it's a big balancing of trying to figure like, hey, who are you with again? Hey, where are you from?
Yeah.
And like shaking hands, kissing babies, and doing all that, and trying to be personal with everyone. And like Daytona this year was so hectic, and we had to talk afterwards, like, hey, yeah, this isn't happening again, because it got to the point where there was almost like a line of people that just wanted to shake my hand before the race, and I wasn't able to get dressed in my fire suit. Like by the time I like got dressed and went to the bathroom and everything, we had missed driver intros because everyone was wanting to kind of sit down and chit chat. I'm like, hey,
I
I'd
gotta
love to
do
talk
this
with you.
thing.
I got a job I gotta go do. Like I'll talk with it afterwards. You can go watch me work for like 2 hours if you want. We can talk about it afterwards. Like I gotta skedaddle. Like, sorry, but
But I do drive a race car, guys.
yes.
For sure. For sure. Well, hey, I got a wanted to ask you a kind of a fun question. If you could pick if you had your own NASCAR Cup team
Got
and
got
pick
three spots.
three
Three
spots
spots these days.
and you could pick any driver from any decade, who's on that three?
Any driver from any decade?
Yeah.
One driver or is it three drivers?
Three drivers.
Three drivers. Okay, so I got like the master team here. All right,
Yeah, yeah.
we got the Ginyu Force going on. Okay, I am going to pick one. I'm gonna go with Brad Keselowski because I like Brad Keselowski,
Wow.
Yeah.
and you'll bring a veteran driver into the sport. Old school. I'm gonna go with Davey Allison. I think that's a good one.
The third one's always the toughest.
I want like young, or if I want kind of like old school. I'm torn. I'll tell you right now, top of my head. Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, or Tim Richmond. It'd be one of those three if I could pick one of those three. We'll just leave it at that.
I got you.
That's
Nice.
fair.
Nice.
Yeah. I think Kyle Busch should be like a sure in, especially if you want to make a couple of Xfinity truck starts. I mean, he's won everywhere he drives, so that's a really good question, Blake. I like that. Look at you being all fun out here.
It should be like every episode if you don't do it already.
Yeah.
Telling you, man,
Well,
that's
I mean, well, I have kind of a fun question, but it's more of a game, right? So you're obviously known for your love of pizza, your pepperoni pizza, but
Papa John's is my favorite.
okay, that's fair, but that's not what I was going to ask. Believe it or not,
Oh man,
I went a little extraordinary here.
yeah.
Pepperoni.
Okay, obviously, yeah, but if you could build, your ideal pizza, like if you had to have multi toppings, and I have a list here. Like I went through the shebang. I went on Reddit. I went to the dark depths of Reddit where people say they put duck on their pizza. I'm like, okay. So, obviously pepperoni's a sure in, right? Okay.
And only pepperoni. That's the rule. Is only pepperoni.
Oh yeah, so you're not like a supreme guy. You don't like no bell
Cole,
peppers.
this is going to be a very short game. It sounds like. I think we're good.
Pepperoni, cheese, sauce, and crust.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, are you a thin crust guy or like what's the?
I mean,
go-to?
I'd like a thick or crust.
Okay.
It's kind of fluffy, not too floppy, but not too crunchy. Like I don't like it burnt.
Like, give me the pizza that breaks my teeth. Like that's what I'm there for. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. And I'm like you. I'm like, pepperoni, some cheese. I don't need anything else. That's really now. I won't turn down the meat lovers, but the moment you start putting veggies on it, I'm dipping. Like I'm gone. Like that's not my language anymore.
You don't want no avocado on your pizza?
I'm afraid not.
Oh my goodness. Well, frick, man, there goes my game. Let me just crumble my paper up real quick. Oh man, well, Brayton, we've had you for an hour, and usually what we do on the podcast is we kind of recap, Charlotte, and we'll talk about next week with Nashville. Usually just on the 3-truck Xfinity and Cup. We love to talk about ARCA and the Cars Tour and whatnot, but I mean, we'd be reaching 4 to 5 hours on our podcast because Kent likes to talk for about 30, 40 minutes most of the time. So he's a talker.
That's true.
You're welcome to stay if you want to. We're just going to kind of recap the weekend, but if you need to dip and you got stuff going on, it sounds like you got a whole bunch of marketing and stuff. I don't want to hold you up. So
I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me come on. It was an absolute blast. Like you said, though, I've got a lot I gotta do, not a whole lot of time to do it. So I gotta put together some deals for Michigan coming up, hopefully. We got a fairly blankish car for Michigan in 2 weeks. So I gotta try and solve that issue. It's one of the rare races where right now we're looking kind of bare. So I gotta try and fix that issue and do really good at my job.
I got you. Absolutely. Well, it's
What
been
part- Just one more quick based off that. Talk about a little bit of your sponsorship packages. What if anybody's listening thinking like, oh, I can't sponsor a race car? Tell them how they're wrong. What can they do for you?
Yeah, so it's a lot cheaper than to think. I promise you that. We do a lot of like mom and pop shop sponsorships that typically start out around literally $100 for a small spot on the rear trunk lid or the 3x3. We have spots though from 100 to 5,000 for a hood or upper quarter panels. That's it can get a little more complex. You start talking about like a full wrap or team memorabilia like that. We do a lot of social media work though. We do a lot of engagement. We do a lot of at track activation, bringing sponsors and partners to the track and stuff like that. But you can have your logo on the hood of a race car for literally $5,000 or less, and that's racing on national television, Fox Sports. So you get a lot of ROI with that. We do a lot of social media plugs, like I said. Like your guys' Facebook page, for example. We made a post and I invited friends to like, and it's. I'm sure you guys go look at it.
It's been blowing up. I was talking to Blake about that. I was like, man, we're never on this thing, and look at this thing go.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys can see firsthand. We have spots ever in between. A couple $100 for a decent spot there on the door, maybe the basic seat pillar. $1,000 for a back bumper spot, or 1,500, 200 for the even lower quarter panel spot. So that's a big part of why we're very approachable is we're very affordable. And like I said, we're not going to go win the race. We're not going to run up front, but you can come to the track, you can see your race car on a logo at the track. And that's a big part of it to a lot of these guys.
It's a lot of little people making little things happen. I mean, in all honesty, when it comes to sponsors. Well, Brayton, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, you can find him on all the socials that he's listed. It's easy to find him on Facebook. It's just his name, right? We'll make sure that we put everything in the description of the podcast, and we look forward to working with you in the future for sure. We are definitely looking forward to Bristol.
And I said, we'll see you guys at Bristol, and we'll stay saucy with it.
All right. Sounds good, man. See you, man. Take
Hey,
it easy.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, what a conversation. I hate that my game. I swear, guys. Look, my handwriting's terrible, but I like pepperoni. I got all kinds of stuff over here. This man's
Dude,
just
that is crazy
pepperoni,
research.
My
cheese,
man
and
said it with such authority too. He's like, it's pepperoni, nothing else.
Dude,
And I
throw
love
the
it.
rest in the trash. Just get rid of it.
my goodness. I was like, he's like Papa John's, and I'm like, oh, I got him. I got a good question. And then he's like pepperoni. I'm like, okay. He's like, no, just pepperoni. I'm like, frick, man. Oh my goodness. But what just an approachable, nice guy, in all honesty.
For sure.
So,
I mean, like I said, that helps with marketability so much. You know, we've talked on here how NASCAR needs personality and how some of the drivers and I get it, you're at the big level. Sometimes all you might get from is a quick signature here and there, right? Man, just for some fans like us, just to be able to sit and talk for almost an hour, and the fact that he would take today to start a podcast that just has started, right? And I will say, he said that he would do that
regardless.
regardless of if we sponsored him or not. And that's just a guy who loves racing, and so definitely support for sure. We thoroughly enjoyed this past weekend at Charlotte, and getting to interact with some of the other sponsors on there too, and it was an awesome weekend. And ARCA is that old school, like you said, Cole. I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, the owners, like you said, wearing jeans, and he's got guys he just kind of calls them like, hey, I need some help, and they go and help. I mean, that is as local track and blue collar and grassroots as it gets, and I love it.
I feel like we should just end it here, but we got more, people, because we had a slam pack jammer full weekend of 3 big series and 3 great races. In all honesty, you could say the truck race was probably the least exciting, but that's just mainly because the guy that won the freaking race is the guy that we've seen win 4 races already this year.
Yeah,
Corey Heim.
Whenever Corey Heim dominates.
So when Corey Heim literally gets in a truck, he dominates, is what Blake's saying.
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, 2 to 3 races this year, he dominated, and he just didn't win the race due to smaller issues.
Yeah, that's out of his control for sure.
I will say, Fox had this broadcast for the truck race, and I think Harvick was on the call. I believe I heard Harvick's voice. You can quote me on that. I know Kent would be the only one here that would know that, and I'm sure he didn't watch the race because he's a slacker, a procrastinator.
No, I was just talking about.
So that's a positive. He definitely did watch the race. Oh me. But Harvick, or whoever it was, mentioned this was his 15th win and his 75th career start. That is a 20% winning percentage.
Yeah. Now I was watching the end of this one. Absolutely insane.
You see the last bit, huh, Kent?
I did get to see the end of this one. We were at my in-laws this past weekend, and fortunately my father-in-law is a big race fan, so we got to see a good bit of it. But yeah, that truck race, I can't remember what was going on, but I did get to see the end of it. I think I was just watching it on my phone, but yeah, I saw that 15th win in 75 starts statistic, and that just blew my mind.
You know, my mind immediately goes, I'm not throwing dirt on anybody by saying this, but this guy is so good. You sit there and wonder, why can't the other Tricon drivers even run decently well? You got Gio Zero has been decently good this year. I've mentioned it multiple times, even at racetracks that you wouldn't consider him to be in the running for. I mean, even in Charlotte, he was on the pole, wasn't he? I mean, I think he started on the pole or was on the front row.
Yeah.
And that's a mile and a half. It's not a bull ring track, And there he is. But, of course, I think it's just the long term mile and a half kind of deal thing. Wake up, Kent. We're not
I
yawning on
know.
the podcast.
I gotta get that out of my system.
Where's the Red Bull? Where's the Monster Energy? Where's the
I
White
know.
Monster?
I do plan on sleeping tonight at some point, so I don't know about that.
Dude, I can drink like a 2 milligram energy drink and just fall asleep.
That's crazy.
I'm desensitized to caffeine at this point.
That's crazy.
But it's just crazy to me that you can win that much percentage of your starts, and then you got two other trucks that aren't even in the top 15 most days, in that Tricon garage. It's kind of wonky to me. Gio's been doing a good job, and Heinz been doing a good job, but of course you got Tony Breidinger, and even the fourth truck, it kind of goes in and out. I think Sawalich is the guy that usually is on the truck for the most part.
Well, they can like all-star. I'll be quite honest with you. It ain't giving all-star vibes, that's for sure, because Corey Heim is your all-star truck.
Brent Cruz, I think, was in the one car, and he looked really good the last time I seen him in that truck. So that was pleasurable to see for sure. But I mean, I know it feels dumb, but it's like almost overshadowed by someone that literally won the race is the way that Ross Chastain even performed in the truck race. He was the guy that went to the high side early on before Lane Riggs even tried it. I mean, this man was rolling the Homestead line at Charlotte Motor Speedway. I mean, right against the wall. And right off the rip had fast speed. But I don't know, guys. I mean, of course, that's kind of a foreshadowing when we get to the actual discussion of the end of the race for the Cup race. But what was y'all's overall interpretations of the race for what you've seen? Of course, me and Blake were in attendance.
I thought starting out it was a fantastic race because you had so many good battles for the lead. It almost reminded me of like some old school early 2000s Cup Series passes for the lead. It didn't look like aerodynamics mattered at all, anything like they were just going back and forth and between Corey Heim and Ross. And it was pretty close for the first part, but look, Corey Heim and his team, they ran away with it in the second half and played some good strategy, and they just didn't have a caution at the latter part of the race, and that's just how it goes sometimes. And it shows that it's not just a good driver that he is; he's got a great team behind him, and it also shows too that I know we've said it before, so I won't spend too long on this, but Corey Heim literally beat Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain at Charlotte in a truck. And I mean, I think Ross has won in the truck series there before. You obviously saw what happened on Sunday, like you said, with the foreshadowing, and um, just shows his just shows his ability as a wheelman.
Also, shout out to Ben Rhodes. We got to meet him on pit road, and we were talking to him. He's like, "You guys are from here, aren't you?" Because anybody that listens to this podcast, we have extremely dark Southern accents. Like it's pretty obvious. And he's like signing my Daytona truck, and he's like, "You guys from around here, aren't you?" Oh my goodness. Ben Rhodes is a fantastic guy too. Another one of those guys that's just a true sportsman and a cool guy. Maybe one day we'll be able to get him on the podcast. Wouldn't that be a good goal to have?
Yeah, that'd be cool. And Ben Rhodes is one of the guys like you've got your kind of like your journeyman guys in the Cup, Xfinity. But one thing that I've always loved about the Truck Series is you've got some guys who are honestly content to be in the Truck Series and to be the regulars. I think of the like the Stuart Friesens of the world, the Matt Craftons back in the day, like the Mike Skinners, Johnny Bensons,
Day,
Ron Horn,
Junior.
Ted Musgrave, like those guys made that series. And I think you've got a core group of that who still do that today in the Truck Series, and Ben Rhodes is definitely one of them.
Of course, being at the truck race, we got to see a ton of passing. I mean, there was passing on the track, in and out, and looked just like a good overall race. In all honesty, there wasn't a ton going on towards the strategy side of it. Kind of like how Rockingham at the end, there was, of course, that weird green flag pit stop cycle where Heim was trying to stretch fuel, and then he stretched as far as he could and then lost that race on that. Well, this was like the opposite. This was just standard green flag stop. Everybody came in, everybody came out. There was no major gains by anybody. It was just a normal race at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And sometimes that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to see Lane Riggs wreck somebody for 3 weeks in a row. I can take a week off.
Well, arguably he didn't wreck Heim at Wilkesboro, but we say my clear, definitely unbiased opinion. He definitely had one lane he could have.
The guy that was literally wearing a Lane Riggs shirt on Friday.
But no, I like what you said about the race. You don't have to have a lot of cautions. You don't have to have a lot of gimmicks for it to be a good race. You had a lot of passing, and I hope TV showed it because there was definitely a lot of passing, and it was just good.
I was pleasantly surprised, but also I'm like, it's the trucks. There's hardly ever a bad race when it comes to the truck series. And I know coming into Charlotte, it's very much one of those tracks that's nitty gritty. Pavements wore out. I mean, you heard Brayton talk about how rough it was. Of course, that was in an ARCA car, but these trucks, man, they old school too. They feel those bumps probably a little bit more than a lot of other cars. So
When they're
it was
going 20 mile an hour, 25 mile an hour quicker than the ARCA cars, probably.
Yeah, for sure. But, it's just crazy to think that Heim could have won 6 races already out of the races that we've had this year. You take the Homestead, power going in and out kind of deal thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, Martinsville got shindigged into the corner. It's just wild to me that we're seeing such a dominant fashion from a driver that is not, a prestigious name like a Kyle Busch, Ron Horday Jr., but Heim is becoming a prestigious name. He's one of those guys that he's one of the young guns that you're looking at and you're like, you know what, 2 to 3 years, everybody's plan's a little bit different,
Well, he's
but you
already
can,
slogan with him too, with Heim time.
yeah, he's already marking himself.
Not many truck drivers or even Xfinity drivers do that at this point.
So I'm going to move on to Xfinity so Kent can seem like he's actually included in the podcast this week because he's checked out on the truck race. Xfinity race obviously was an exciting one for him. I think I could hear the girlish screams all the way from Georgia up here in North Carolina when Byron passed Allgaier.
Yeah, I don't know who you were hearing because I was in North Carolina. I was in the hills of North Carolina just a week too late. Man, that was this was a race that I didn't see any of the first bit of it just because we were out doing stuff with Allie's family. Didn't really keep up with it well, and then when I did, all I knew was William Byron was running about like 12th or somewhere between 12th 14th there with probably 40, 50 to go. But he had won 2 stages, so I didn't know. I figured there probably was a penalty and turned out was.
Sped on pit road, yeah.
So glad he got that out of his system a day early. I just hate that he got the win out of his system too. So, but no, yeah, that was so. I try to be balanced in my view of this. I hate it for Allgaier. Man, I hate it for Allgaier.
Where it seems like he is, it gets away from him just as much as it has Heim this year. In all honesty, there's been 3 to 4 races that he could have won.
Now, Allgaier has also had a couple fall in his lap, and so I mean it's evened out a little bit. But I do hate it for Allgaier. It was cool to see. It was cool to see Byron win, but once he was restarting third with 2 to go, that much fresher tires, he knew how it was going to end. Still an exciting finish. I think it was probably more frustrating for Allgaier the fact that he lost 3 more positions before the checkered flag. But great racing though. Those Xfinity cars, man, I just crank up the horsepower. I don't care what you got to do. Crank up the horsepower. And put different motors in it. Do whatever you got to do. Turn the Cup guys loose in these.
Yeah,
that would be. Especially on the short track. Yes, that's the way to do it. That's the way to go. But they never will. But man, great racing.
I heard earlier today that they were opening to increasing the horsepower in the Cup cars. I seen a tweet earlier from a NASCAR official they're saying they were open to that next few years, maybe next year, whatever. Because, if you're going to have your fans complaining about horsepower the entire time, maybe you should do something about it so you don't have to hear about it anymore.
Well, maybe
That
that's
would
one of these false promises, like, oh, we got another manufacturer coming in soon. How long have you had that one?
Oh, boy. So I do hate it for Allgaier because obviously Byron dominated the first two stages. I mean, he won both stages. He had to fight for it a little bit on that second stage, I do believe. But it certainly was Byron's race to lose, it felt like, till you got to that last stage and he spit. And you're like, okay, now Allgaier looks really good. And then you have, 17 cautions in between that last stage. It bunched them all up enough where Byron was able to, increase enough spots just based upon the restarts. So what was your overall interpretations? Also, me and Blake were not in attendance because apparently the Xfinity tickets were $60 to go to the race. Of course, that was the morning of, but still, $60 to go to an Xfinity race.
Well, and two, we were looking at going later into, and none of the available to buy. So I'm not quite sure what was up with that, because you look at the Xfinity race and it's like, well, obviously not sold out. Even in the parts that, I mean, they don't sell tickets around the whole track, obviously, but even in the dogleg section that they do, or a quad oval section that they do sell it, it was still maybe 70% full. So I was kind of disappointing from a fan's perspective, but it worked out. We were able to rest a little bit after Friday.
My dang calves, man, were bad. Even yesterday, I was walking up the hill to go to the bridge that goes over Gate 2 at Charlotte, and my calves were tight, man. It felt like someone was just gripping those things. I think one thing that I've been talking about Sanchez all year, but how about him getting that third place finish this week? For, of course, that used to be Parker Kligerman's team. Not that he owns it, obviously, but that's who he raced for. And they've been putting good efforts week to week with a guy that, a lot of people were like, maybe he moved up too soon, from the truck series. And also, that two truck in the truck series this year does not look anywhere close to what the two truck was last year either.
I mean, the two's got a truck this year.
I hadn't seen them.
But no, I think Nick Sanchez. He's last year I saw him win at Daytona in the trucks, and he put together a great season last year. And it's one thing when you're talking about moving a driver up to Cup too quickly, but if he's moving up to Xfinity, like if he's winning in the truck series, to me, I'm like, logically, I have no problem with somebody as a fan like trying it out in the Xfinity series, right? So, and Big Machine, that's not a top tier organization by any means. It's kind of like one of your, kind of like your B teams, but I think he's doing a fine job there.
Also, they have, I mean, if we're being all honest with you here, the sponsorship with Big Machine, it's pretty much the same sponsor week in and week out. Sometimes they change, of course, whatever beverage is on front of the car. They change maybe the beverage a little bit, but most of the time it's the same thing. So I I wonder if Kligerman was a part of the choosing process for that. Maybe because obviously we seen Parker was a great driver, clean driver, just one of those good guys in the sport, and still is to this day when he makes a start. Of course, he started in the truck series in that 75 truck, but it's just it feels like someone had a assistance in choosing this driver because it just seems like the right fit. It's crazy how well they've gone right off the jump because most people struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the behind the scenes details or logistics look like, obviously, but it has flowed really well.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, he's won 3 ARCA races before the Truck Series. He won at Talladega, Kansas, and Michigan, and he won the championship in 2022 in the ARCA Series. He just beat Daniel Dye about a couple of points, I think around 12 or 14, something like that. But it just seems like he's been doing a good job. And that car this week, that golden car, woo-wee, what a good scheme. I love me some gold cars. So, what about you, Kent? You like you a gold car?
Hey, look, I love me a gold car. Gold, hey, look, anything reflective like gold numbers, look, I'll always love the Wood Brothers Gold 21 there. But, anyways.
Shout out Nick Sanchez. That's what we're saying out here. Love to have you on the podcast. We're just throwing everybody's name out here.
Yeah.
Richard Petty, we'd love to have you. Oh, my goodness. All right, well, we'll move on to the Slam Daddy, the big boy, the World 600. I swear, when Ross Chastain called it the World 600, I couldn't help but just smile.
Yeah.
Because that is a man that knows the history of the sport, right?
Well, Dale Jr. brought up it would not be difficult to say it's the World 600 presented by
Coca-Cola.
or Coca-Cola presents the World 600. Whatever you want to do there, you could give it its title back in a roundabout way. We've got the Bojangles Southern 500, right? You know, so we could do something with that.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, but I know it's a little bit ahead. I'm not obviously going to get into that first, but I just thought that was really cool that he couldn't help himself but say it and then correct himself after. You know, he's like going back and forth on the names because he's just going crazy inside that car. He's kind of got that Austin Cindric mentality when you win, right? Like, he's genuinely happy.
I was going to say, I don't know too many guys that aren't genuinely happy when they win, but
well, there's plenty. I mean, you ever seen Kyle Larson get out of a car?
Yeah,
ooh, I won another race.
It happened again. But no, Ross, his emotion, and you know, it's contagious. It's absolutely contagious. That's why he's got so many fans.
Blake's like,
you know, golly. But he's got that about him, and I've been saying, you know, for years, NASCAR needs the guy with the right personality, the right everything to come together. We talked about it last week. You know, I said, look, Denny Hamlin has the personality. He doesn't have the championships. Logano's got the championships. He doesn't have the personality. Chastain has the personality, and he's early enough on in his career where if he were to back this up with some more wins, then all of a sudden he's fun, but he's not afraid to be that kind of villain. Dale Sr. did something crazy. He was the villain, but he was popular. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again.
So that's kind of like Stone Cold Steve Austin in wrestling. He came off as like what they call a heel. Supposed to be the bad guy, but everybody loved him so much. He was a face, which means he was a good guy. And it's the same thing with Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Ross Chastain, though, is developing this. Drivers don't like to see him coming because it's pretty unpredictable what could happen. But, you know, which he's cleaned it up a lot lately. But, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what he's going to do. You also know what he's not afraid to do, but the fans love him. And so I really think that he could be this next superstar for the sport. But the sport needs him to keep winning. Just don't let Byron dominate like 300 laps led and then decide to pass. Like, don't do that. Like, just wreck him on lap one. I'd like you more if you did that. Like, golly. Anyways.
Well, it's hard for him to wreck him when he's in 40, starting out P40, you know, and Byron's up, you know, in the top 3-4 cars.
Yeah. But Ross has a good brand to him, too, because he's a normal guy. I mean, heck, he's a watermelon farmer at his core, right? And blue collar guy. And I think of like Carl Edwards. You knew every time he won, he was doing a backflip. Ross, every time he wins, he's going to hold his watermelon up, kind of show the crowd, you know, kind of like an almost Lion King-esque kind of way. And he's that thing onto the ground, and the crowd goes crazy. I mean,
I was hoping he's going to throw it on the car, in all honesty. I want a die-cast where there's watermelon all over the freaking thing.
And he's going up into the crowd. How many drivers do you see do that regularly, right? And he's going up.
Offered the watermelon.
And he's just, I mean, like, yeah, offering watermelon, and the folks are eating it.
Yeah, they're not, no hesitations at all. They're like, I don't know where this guy's mouse been. No, just chomp.
But, I mean, the fans love it. You know, it's some creative things like that I wish a lot of the other drivers did. But yeah, he's got a good brand to him, and he is awesome for the sport.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, can't mention that Byron did dominate 3/4, maybe even like if we get to a fraction more, like 4/5 of the race. He was a dominant car, and I swear, guys, I just feel like he just used too much over the long period. It's a marathon, and this man was burning it up as much as he could. I think just when it came to that fourth stage, he just ran out. Austin said he ran out of talent, but because that's just what Austin likes to say.
Yeah.
He has no control this weekend. He's on vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness, but I think he just said that because of what you said about Logano and that big Texan chain right after the race. We'll get to it. I think the coolest story, and of course, the media ran with it here. I mean, this is like pretty obvious. Last to first. First driver to do it since Bobby Allison, 1969. First modern driver to do it from 1972 to the present. Of course, this is, no adjustments. This is like I wrecked the car, had to start up in a backup car, and drove all the way up the field. And I watched him through the race. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, he's got a super fast car. He's going to pass everybody. But I watched him kind of just beat and bang, just kind of move up on the race. And unlike Chastain fashion, that car was clean. There's two marks on it, I think, on both of the back ends of the car, just little tiny black scrapes. Normally, what's a Ross Chastain car might not have a fender on it. Like this man's not afraid to use up what he's got. And it's kind of like Hocevar, which we'll talk about Hocevar here in a little bit. It was crazy to me that car was so clean when it came across and when he won that race, because I'm a diecast guy, and of course I want to get the race because the diecast car was at the race, but that car's clean.
Yeah,
It's like there's no screws. Where's the screws at?
yeah.
But to think that he's the first driver that me and Blake were in attendance for, the first driver since Bobby Allison, who just passed away not too long ago this year, 1969, to come from the back to the first. That's just flooring to me, right?
Well, we've been blessed to be able to see some pretty cool stuff specifically at the Coke 600, because back in 2017 saw Austin Dillon win in the 3 car, and first time it had won since October of 2000, right? And I think of this past year or a few days ago, and when you see something like that of historic proportions of being able to pass 40 car, and I get it's easier on the 1.5 miles, but I'll be honest, you had elite drivers up front, and the way that they could error block, I mean, you're having to grind. If you can get half an inch here, half an inch there, I mean, you're having to put together perfect laps. And from a fan, it was almost like, gosh, I wish they could just pass. But then I'm also like, man, these guys are good. And these guys they are wheeling this really well.
I love how Kent was like, you know what? Byron sucks at aero blocking, and this man did a masterful job. I would say for the majority, not even majority, for all of the race, he just ran out of race car at the end. He couldn't aero block a slide job. I mean, you can't. I mean, he did such a masterful job, and it's the second time that Byron's done such a great job on a racetrack earlier this year at Darlington. Another one that feels like it just escaped away, but he's shown that he's got, the dominance of a Kyle Larson, or, if you look back in the past, a Kyle Busch or a Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, he can lead all those laps, and there's no telling how many races that Jimmy Johnson led so many laps and didn't end up, putting the final bullet point at the end of it. It happens to the best of them. So I say this, if you are a Byron fan, looking at Kent with his Byron hat on, same thing when I talk about Blaney. There's no reason to worry, because this is a guy that's going to be around for a while. Of course, just signed an extension through, 2028, 2029. How far was it, Kent?
It was 4 years.
It's
What
2025
year is
now.
it? Yeah, so
2029 then.
29. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy that's locked up the most at Hendrick now. I mean, Larson's only locked up to 2027, 2026. No, 2028, something like that. And the Chase and Bowman are just both through 2026 right now. He's going to be around for a while. He's young. That's just, I mean, you're going to see him win a championship one day. We don't know when it's going to be. We just hope he don't have the Denny Hamlin kind of deal, curse kind of. He wins a ton of races, but just never able to put a whole year together,
Yeah, he has really in the past few years just elevated his game. I mean, I remember when he came up to the Cup Series and I thought this kid ain't ready. And all of a sudden, when they came around with the next gen car, he just went off. And so I think he's got the second most wins of any driver in the next gen era. Probably about 4 or so wins behind Kyle Larson in this new car. And he's running so consistent this year. Every single race this season, it seemed like he could run up there and run at the front. He's had some bad luck in some races. He's had some not so great finishes, but it has not come because they didn't have speed. And I've been saying for a while, I think Rudy Fugel's one of the best crew chiefs in the garage.
For sure.
I really, part of the reason that I started really getting excited about pulling for William Byron is because I was like, man, he's got a crew chief that leaves it all on the track and does an incredible job putting a car on the track that his driver can win with, but also putting together strategy that can really elevate his driver's games. When it came to the Coke 600, what you saw between William Byron and Denny Hamlin, neither driver ended up winning the race, but it almost seemed to me like not a passing of the torch moment, not a moment where you have a legend that's like, all right, you take it from here. But it was a moment for William to say, I can go up with the best that the sport has to offer and beat him. And he did beat him. He was passed a couple times, sure, but then he also was able to hang with him and pass him back. Hamlin never ran away from Byron. Byron didn't really run away from Hamlin there until after that last pit stop. And then, of course, Hamlin, they didn't get all the gas in the car, so he had to pit again. But yeah, as a Byron fan, man, I was ticked at how the race ended. I wished he would have won. But at the same time, he's got this car figured out. He ain't going anywhere.
That's a fact. It's crazy. I'm just kind of mirroring this here. We just talked to Brayton last year, right? And we were just talking about how genuine and authentic this guy is. And, I made that statement where there's going to be people that you will get a call eventually if you're putting the performance on track, you're being authentic to yourself, and you're just a good person. That's what Ross Chastain did. You put it all together. I mean, Ross didn't have a prestigious start. He did not have a prestigious name, money, anything. He won his way to the top.
Yeah.
And he marketed his way to the top.
Well, and you look at he was driving for Johnny Davis all those years, and I remember he was saying in an interview, and this is while he was racing for Trackhouse. Somebody asked, "Is it tough to do this?" He's like, "Tough. What was tough was I was running for Johnny Davis, and we didn't know how we were going to get to the track each week."
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just think about that when you're looking at motorsports. And I know a lot of people like to joke about the ARCA series being like, it's a guaranteed 14 caution race kind of deal crap thing.
It was actually a pretty good race this past weekend.
I'm pretty sure it had maybe less cautions than the Xfinity race that did this week.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
When it comes to a pure sense, it was a great race.
Yeah. I found that numbing when I was sitting here thinking. I was, of course, researching my nice little game that I had going on. Just realization came to me. I'm like, that's really cool because you can see. I know Kent talks about history all the time. You can see history possibly being able to repeat itself there. If just everything lines up for someone that's willing to put in the hard work and stuff. And Ross Chastain put in all that hard work. and he was able to win the World 600, the Coke 600, from last to first with a wrecked, car, having to put that thing all together. Of course, that was a whole team effort, which we talk about here. And the man put it all together and was able to get the highest rated race on the Gluck poll. Who would have figured, right? 90.2, yes. No was a 9.8, and there was 36,000 votes for this poll. The next highest race was Las Vegas, 87.2%. It only had 18,000 votes.
That makes you wonder, what does that 9% want?
I think you have a crowd that's voting that's ticked off because they don't get Prime. I really think it's
That could
no, but I think that's
on
it.
Twitter, but they don't get Prime.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's crazy, and if you're listening to this and you missed the Coke 600 and you're mad, you heard it here first. Go, it gets you the free trial of Prime. Do it this Saturday, and you should be able to watch the remaining 4 races in the free trial before you cancel your subscription.
In all honesty, it is of course, I understand there's people out there that don't order stuff off Amazon. That's cool. But if you order anything off Amazon, Amazon Prime's great to have because you save a buttload on shipping. Even, whenever you get to the whole paying thing, you're going to pay money for something. You might as well pay something that saves you a little bit of money over the long end. But,
we're fortunate that my in-laws have it, and we, kind of mooch off of them. But we used to have it, but then it got too easy to spend money, and stuff kept showing up at the house, and I said, no, we're gonna nip that in the bud.
That's fair.
You talk about a platform that they got everything, and so it's not a bad deal at all. It's worth the money, but even if you don't want to spend the money, don't do the free trial, and you ought to, like I said, wait till, I think it lasts for about a month, so wait till the end of the week, and you should, before you have to renew it and pay, you should be able to watch all the races and then cancel if that's what you choose to do.
Or, you could just make another, you can make 2 accounts. You can use your wife's account and you can use your account.
Dang it.
Big brain right there. That's what I paid for them college years, so I can figure out how to squeeze out as much money as I can over free trials.
Look, I can do that with the best of them.
That's right. But another thing I will like to mention is, obviously, we had the big letdown of Larson in general this week. We seen him wreck at Indy. We seen him wreck at Coke 600 twice. Technically, he hits the wall, bounces off the wall, goes through the grass, and then he gets caught up in another accident later and pretty much ends his day. Big letdown, Motorsports. But not only was that outshadowed by Ross Chastain, there was another name, another prestigious name, you could say, someone that may have, had a name in motorsports. John Hunter Nemechek. I know he didn't have the overall finish at the end of the race, but that car was lightning fast for 3 stages of that race. That was fantastic to see from Legacy. Even Eric Jones was up in the top 10 at one point. I think he ended up was in 8th or 9th at one point, and they were battling hard. And that's 3 straight weeks that Legacy's come in and showed up saying, hey, we belong here.
And I'll be honest, it was to a point with Nemechek, if the Coke 600 went fuel mileage ish, or you had some things happen to the leaders, I'm thinking this cat might steal a win with how fast that car was. And I'm thinking, like, man, what a great time it would be to get your first win. And same thing with Hocevar this weekend, too. I mean, you want to talk about a guy, too, who could get his first win. I mean, heartbreak on the engine failure there.
Yeah. Well, look at the top 10. Just a few names. Briscoe has had an awful season, really forgettable season to this point. Finished 3rd. Allmendinger, really hadn't talked about him at all this year. He finished 4th. Keselowski finished in the top 5. You
First
can't
top 10 of this year. First
but
top
feel
5.
happy for him. The dude has wrecked while leading this season. He just has not had a it's been forgettable. McDowell in the 71 finished 7th. Priest in the 60 in the top 10 finishing 9th. Noah Gragson got a top 10, and
Nice.
don't look too far behind, but you've got Ricky Stenhouse, Eric Jones, and SVG right there, all inside the top 15. Great runs for all those drivers, and I think that's something that the Coke 600 does is past mile marker 400, it's a different ball game, and fatigue starts wearing in, and you see a lot of these drivers who are a little bit more physically in shape and mentally able to hold a straight wheel win. And I think you saw a guy who, one of the most mentally tough individuals in the sport, won the race on Sunday, just to be completely honest. I think it came down to mentally disciplined and mentally tough, and mentally tough beat mentally disciplined, if that makes sense at all. But yeah, but it's cool to see those names in the top 10, top 15 for sure, because there were a lot of folks that were just starving for a good finish.
And they had people that were absent, like Joe Logano, Bubba Wallace.
Team Penske in general, man.
Blaney showed up towards the end of the race, and of course had that that wreck with Briscoe and Suarez. Suarez is having a good run too. In all honesty, I mean, there's so many good names that we need to see a good run out of, and of course they got involved. Someone got involved in a couple cautions. I mean, Larson looked fast starting out of the race. I mean, he zoomed up P1 for a little bit, and then he was P1 when he wrecked, and all on. But Bowman did the same thing. I mean, it's easy to do when it comes to Charlotte, but I don't know, man. It just felt like the Gluck poll was a good summarization of how most people probably felt when they left that race. First, thank God rain didn't play involvement in this race, or the Coke 600. It's the first time it's happened in a long time, it feels like. And then two, just great story. I mean, you couldn't write it any better. I'm glad NASCAR was able to script this race like this. It was fantastic.
It was great, man. No, I tell you, it was Charlotte is such a fun track for the fans. I mean, you're right in the center of everything. The atmosphere is great. And look, I've been to some Charlotte races to where you would want to pluck your eyes out. But
Last year,
but but you still got so much around that track with the tons of autographs from a fan's perspective. Tons of autographs you can get. I mean, obviously all the race shops are there, and then now that the next gen cars come out and the racing has actually been awesome, Charlotte, you see why it's fourth year in a row. It's a sellout. I mean, if you want to go to the Coke 600 next year, I recommend getting your tickets in about February or March, and because it's going to sell out, especially after the race you just saw on Sunday. Like, make sure you go if you want to go. Don't sit and question, well, I don't know. No, just buy the tickets and figure it out later because you want to be there.
I guarantee you the fan rewards would be instantaneously redeemed when that thing offers up for the Coke 600.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, that thing ain't going to make it to Black Friday.
Heck no. I just can't help but, like, when I come out of this race weekend, of course, with the awesome experience of Brayton being able to be a part of the ARCA series, even in, a small little shindig that we are over here, little Radio Shack looking podcast that we are. Got one person on her phone right now, and got two that we just try to do what we can, just hang in there. One of them was not even freaking here. It was a great overall weekend for racing, for NASCAR, and for the sport of racing. Beyond NASCAR, it's just a fantastic week. And I just can't help, when I woke up Monday morning, I was just smiling. I was just happy. I was like, I swear, this is the best racing weekend that I've had in probably years.
Yeah.
And that's just nice to say.
Well, in NASCAR too, they were kind of struggling there on the Cup side there for a little bit. And then Wilkesboro was a surprise for a lot of fans. You saw a lot of three wide for the lead, and got a good rating on the Gluck poll, and everything worked out. And so then they go to Charlotte, and everything worked out there too. So it's just been a much needed. I think the last 2 weeks have been needed for the industry and just for the Cup Series in general.
especially. Go ahead, Kent.
Sorry, no, just historic venues like, Charlotte Motor Speedway and North Wilkesboro that are both classic staples in the history of the sport. For both of them to put on good shows in front of the grassroots fans, that's a mega win. And then you look at, the winners, especially Ross Chastain. I mean, he's going to identify with so many of the guys that were, just in the seats. I feel like if you're sitting there watching a race, for a lot of us, we're going to sit there and we're going to go, man, if I have to identify with somebody, it's probably Ross. And for him to win, it felt like a win for the fans. And so it was just a heck of a weekend where you have 3 major racing events taking place on Sunday. And I'll just be honest, NASCAR outshined them all.
And Ross has been on a good streak lately because and I know Wilkesboro is a little it's an all-star race. It's like, short track, whatever. I tell you, if the leaders would have gotten together, Ross was going to win that race in Wilkesboro.
That's true.
And they came out with a great car, and I was thinking, like, dang, it's been a while since I've seen Trackhouse just come out with that kind of speed. Granted, he won. He didn't win. He finished second at Texas. That was with some attrition stuff, right? But when it comes to like raw speed, they've really started to make it happen. And we're going to a track this week where he's known that to do, I'd say, fairly well. So
yeah, and another prestigious racetrack, you could say. It's not the fairgrounds, I guess technically, but it's Nashville. What a good transition! Look at us being kind of professional here, right?
And
alrighty, so for the truck series, we got a couple of starts for some people that don't always make starts. I always say it weird, but we're just rolling with it today. Number 1, William Sawalich making that start in that truck. Clayton Green making a start in the 2 truck. And we were just making fun of the 2 truck. Maybe Clayton will be able to get them a good performance this week. Kyle Busch in the 07 making another return. So that's he'll be in the 07 this week, not just the 7. So a little change, a little different change.
that 07 truck ain't too hot.
I
agree.
They had dang BJ McLeod this week in
Man.
the All-Star truck.
I was hoping that would kind of be hit the moment where it's like, hey, I belong in something better. And I know one race doesn't define you, but
tough.
I'd like to see a couple more just for his sake, because that was not great.
Yeah. 7's going to be Corey Day this week. Haven't seen a lot out of Corey Day, in all honesty. He struggled here first a little bit, but then number 63, we got Akinora Ogata. So that's going to be a good start for him. We'll be looking forward to that. Xfinity, we got a whole bunch. We got Nick Lentz in the 07, Ross Chastain making a start in the 9 for Junior Motorsports, 14 Logan Beaton, number 17 of Corey Day, Eric Almirola is making a return this week in the 19 car, Jeffrey Earnhardt in the 24. 32 of Catherine Legg. The 35 has not been announced yet. It's to be announced. 53 of Mason Maggio. 78 of Thomas A, baby. Yeah. Yep. Same guy. And the 91 of Myatt Snyder will be making another return. For Nashville, and in Cup, we got the 44 JJ Yaley, the 66 Chad Fincham, which we just, we were talking about with Brayton last year. He's got one of his K&N cars. And then Corey Himes making another start in Nashville. And it's a track that I would imagine that's in Himes' wheelhouse. So that's going to be a good start for him, I think.
Where did Himes finish his last Cup start? I mean, it was up there. Yeah.
He outperformed all the other 2311 cars.
Yeah, that's wow.
Something to kind of keep in mind too. I don't know exactly play out, but Denny's fiance, she's due on Sunday with their boy coming, so I don't know how that's going to affect our pick'em, but that's just something to look out for.
Yeah. I would imagine if Hamlin gets replaced, we would give that person, repick essentially of who's left. But you would have to know going into it that that's probably a repick, and probably the other drivers that you would consider picking are not going to be available because they'll be picked. So, alrighty. So that's all the starting stuff All right, Kent, do you have anything you want to talk about Nashville? I know it's kind of got an interesting history, of course, with the name Super Speedway. It's kind of Nashville Superspeedway. It's kind of not true a super speedway. It's an
Yeah,
intermediate track. So,
it's misleading.
yeah. Do you
It's
have any
misleading.
history?
So the track was at least the concept, and you think about when if you think about when the sport was really growing and when these intermediate tracks were being built, when did the majority of these tracks pop up?
I mean, obviously in your middle 2000.
Yeah, I mean late '90s, early 2000s, and so this one was kind of dreamt up in '97, and they didn't get the green light until '99, and it didn't get done until '01. And so essentially, it was built with, and if you look at the grandstands, you look and you say, how can they only have half the grandstands? Like it looks like something's missing.
Yeah.
Have you been to Nashville?
I've been to the city, but I've not been to the track. But it's very. I do know that when it comes to actual grandstands, they only have like 10 sections, maybe. They're in the trial.
Yeah, so it was designed, and I didn't look up. I believe the actual capacity is closer to 30 or 40,000. It was designed to have 50,000, with the ability to expand. And this is crazy. The ability to expand to between 150 and 200,000,
Wow.
which would have put it up there with the like Texas, really beyond what Atlanta currently holds. Just absolutely insane type of venue that they thought this could have been. I think it's safe to say this will never be a place that holds 200,000 people. Um, I think realistically, if they continue to do well, they might expand it to about 75 or 80. I could see that. But I don't even know if NASCAR knows what they're going to do long term here yet. But no, when it debuted as a track, it debuted with the current Xfinity series. Then it was called the Busch series. And so the Cup series did not race there up until very recently. And I'm glad they did. I think any race you get on a concrete surface like that, they're fun for me to watch. I love, like, your Dovers, Bristol, and of course Nashville. So it's going to be fun, that element of just having a different surface. There's a lot of good finishes out there at Nashville and different things. So one of my favorite stories, just briefly about Nashville, is Kyle Busch won a Busch Series event there one year, and when he did, it's Nashville. So what do you get in Victory Lane? You get a really nice customized electric guitar, and it's a sponsorship opportunity for the maker of the guitar, that sort of thing. And Kyle Busch absolutely destroyed it. I mean, just smashed it. I mean, it was toast. He wasn't interested in hanging that up anywhere. He wasn't interested. I'm guessing he doesn't know how to play. Like for me, like I'm a musician. I play the guitar, and so when I see a guitar like that get smashed, I'm like, come on, man. It hurts me. But he did that. I think he got in a little bit of some hot water with NASCAR there and some other folks. And so he
Never,
What?
not Kyle Busch. He's never done
never.
that.
He reached sainthood 20 years ago.
That's yikes.
I mean, it's ordained elder minister and everything.
I don't know about that. So no, it just it's a fun track. It's a track that doesn't have a whole lot of cup history to it yet, obviously, but it's got a little bit of history, and it's one that I think we'll see if these intermediates keep putting on good shows. It'll be one that you see, really get a chance to stick around longer than probably was anticipated. NASCAR was trying to get towards Nashville. I think their goal is to one day get to the fairgrounds, but I don't.
It's a seating
Realistically,
capacity, man. Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Um, and NASCAR's proved that they won't toss something out just because of the seating capacity. But at the same time, go ahead, Blake.
I said the seating capacity really doesn't matter anymore. I mean, all the money they make off TV and
Yeah.
Also, I guess, I mean, you get the good aesthetic of the seats being filled if you don't got many seats.
That's what I was going to say. That's the main thing. And that's why I think Nashville looks so good on TV is because it doesn't have as many seats. And so it typically is a sellout. Uh, and, you got North Wilkesboro's the same story. Doesn't have as many seats. It's going to be a sellout. It's going to be kind of exclusive.
the class at Bowman Gray, you're looking at
Yeah.
Absolutely.
1,000.
Absolutely. Whereas, you go to Atlanta and it's like, which Atlanta's been much more full lately. I was probably at the race that was the least attended in the Cup Series in Atlanta. I was there in 2018
I remember
when
that was
Harvick won, and it was his first win there since 2001. So that was a big deal.
There was no one to celebrate it.
No, I mean it felt empty. It was
Yeah.
weird. It was really weird.
But
So
it's got to have a good energy. Track needs good energy to make a race good. I know that sounds stupid because the racing can be fantastic, but like for people to consider a race to be good, it needs to have a good atmosphere around it.
and Bristol has been kind of a snooze fest the last couple of times we go there. But it's got the best energy of any track on the circuit, just about. And so that's why I think people go to Bristol and they might see a bad race and they're like, "That's is what it is." We'll see y'all in the fall. We'll be back. We got our tickets. They put on a good show. So, but anyways, but when it comes to Nashville, not a whole lot of history, but just it's one of these places that it's a to be determined. I feel like.
That's fair. I get to take over Austin's segment, so I don't know what kind of posture I'm supposed to do here. Am I supposed to be like kind
Yeah,
of deal
sit back
thing?
in your chair and swivel.
Like Dr. Evil?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. Well, I'll make it kind of short. Nashville Superspeedway is a tri-oval intermediate track. It's just a mile and a half. It's 1.3, I think 2. It is a concrete track. So concrete tracks tend not to age as poorly. It's one of those long when they choose to pave concrete, they know it's going to last for a while. And they've not had to do a full repave. This is the same payment as it was in 2001. It's the same thing. Nothing's changed. The front stretch is 9 degrees of banking. The back stretch is 6 degrees of banking. So there's a little bit of differential in regards to that, about 3 degrees of banking. And the corners are 14 inches. A little bit of banking, not a ton, but there is a little bit. So you'll see some good racing most of the time. And I mean, if we're talking about the next gen car on these intermediate tracks, guys, there's only been one track where it's been like, and that was Kansas. And Kansas last year was an absolute barn burner. I know most people see Nashville and they automatically assume it's going to be a fuel mileage race with Joey Logano being able to stretch it on 17,000 cautions and 7 gas tanks. But I think that this has a good possibility of being another good race at a track that sits around, I think I've seen online about 12 to 15,000. But if they wanted to bring temporary seating in, they could actually elevate those numbers up to 38,000 people in Nashville Superspeedway. You would have to factor in this concrete that usually doesn't have a lot of tire wear associated with it. And we are going to throw it over to our tire rubber expert, Blake. I'll have to edit his government name out because I'm an idiot. It's not like when we tag each other on the socials. They can't tell, but all right.
Yeah. So something that I think is interesting when it comes to concrete in this next gen car and also the tire combinations is you have had a ton of variables. Anytime where the where a track has no rubber on it, you're getting a good amount of tire wear on the concrete tracks. When there's been some rubber laid down, you're not getting a lot. You look at Bristol. I mean, it's really hard it's really hard to make a guess based on Bristol. Dover has been one of your more consistent tracks where you're probably getting about a second to a second and a half on tire wear. So I think they are going to matter because I think they will matter. They might not matter as much as what one might would like at a Charlotte, but they are bringing the same right side tire that they had the last few years. They are like some other tracks this year. They are trying to bring some softer left side tires because when it comes to tire wear in general, the left sides have been the Achilles heel. Right sides have been all right, but the left sides they're not really wearing at all. So that's been a little bit of a problem there. But Goodyear's trying to work on it. The same left and right side tire combination is the same this week that you saw in Vegas, Homestead, Darlington, Texas, and Kansas. All of those had great amount of tire wear. Uh, Trucks and Xfinity are racing there. They were bringing the same tires they have since 2022. Pretty straight cut and simple. It's just above a short track, so no wet weather tires in place.
It ain't gonna rain.
There's a chance on Friday for the truck race, but
No rain. Me no like rain.
but it but it doesn't look like it for Sunday or Saturday.
That's good at least. Fan stuff. Buy tickets. Go to race. The end.
I saw there's not a lot of tickets left for this week.
Well, talk about a track that you can go to, and there's so much. Of course, it's not in Nashville. I think it's in Lebanon, Tennessee.
Yeah.
But if you're near Nashville, I mean, you gotta go check out Nashville for all the country music history and whatnot. There's just all kinds of stuff going on throughout there. So
Have
it feels.
have any of y'all ever been to Nashville before?
I have not, but I do plan on going.
I have.
I tell you, Nashville is tons of fun, especially where our country music singers bars are at downtown, and Tootsie's. You've seen those on some Trackhouse cars. Tootsie's is downtown, and I think Eric Church's bar is sponsoring Corey Haim, or they're sponsoring somebody this weekend.
Interesting.
Yeah, downtown Nashville's a lot of fun.
I always give people slack because they're like, it's the home of country music. Well, not technically, because there's multiple homes of different sounds of country music. But that's, if you enjoy hearing about country music, I have a country music podcast that is pretty much ancient now. I need to dust it off and do a couple of podcasts on that because I always loved enjoying it. But it's just me monologuing. So there's no interactions or anything. So if you don't like this voice, don't listen to it because it's all you'll hear. It will haunt you in your dreams.
And I'll say, if you're in Nashville, get you some Nashville hot chicken. That's where it's at.
Absolutely. Hattie B's.
Yeah. And
Most definitely.
one of my favorite places for food is Blake Shelton's Old Red.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're flying in the Nashville airports, they have an Old Red there too, and that's a really good place to eat.
There's one in Gatlinburg as well.
Nice.
So that's right on the main street. If Blake knows anything, it's food. I mean, just look at him.
That's right.
Alrighty, so our spicy takes for the week is sponsored by Nashville Hot Chicken. We don't know what Nashville Hot Chicken's sponsoring us.
Hattie B's is good. Get Hattie. That's the best Hattie B's.
Well, get on it, Blake. Put them on the line.
Now that'd be fun. A Hattie B's sponsorship.
And you ain't lying. Spicy takes, it would just be like back and forth. It'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't believe. Kent, do you even remember what your spicy take was last week?
Yeah, I said, I think I said something crazy like Hosafar. No.
No, you said Larson would be able to run both races. Both are going to be affected by rain, but it's going to work out to where he can still.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
and I was right about one of them being affected.
3/4.
But he also totally did not finish or come close to finishing either event. So,
nope.
Anyways.
You remember what yours was, Blake?
Yeah, I said Cletus was going to get a top 5 in the ARCA series.
He got 10th, I think.
He was running up to second, and boy, oh boy, did he take his moment and screw it. I mean, he screwed that up so bad, but I mean, he admitted it. I mean, he totally owned it, but man. That crowd was crazy for Cletus on
They
Friday.
were. It was wild.
Great crowd too. Shout out to all the fans who went out to Charlotte. That was a great crowd for an ARCA Series race. Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, high energy all the days that we were there. We obviously weren't there Saturday, but Friday, electric. Sunday, oh my goodness, was electric at the end.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Everybody's standing up.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's not many races that I can remember where I'm standing up and I'm thinking like, heck yeah, and we're screaming and hollering. I mean, those are the rare ones, but those are the best ones.
I think of Bowman Gray earlier this year. I think of Darlington in the fall last year when Kyle Busch was chasing Briscoe down. That was pretty passionate. We were all cheering on Busch for the first time ever.
When Austin and I were at Darlington and Eric Jones won, that was pretty good too.
But all those kind of have, the same thing, and, they're historic racetracks and they have historical fans that are true racing fans. My spicy take did not hit, I'm pretty sure. And I can't remember Austin's either, but I don't think anybody hits their spicy takes anymore. So, Big Ripsky. So, Kent, what's your spicy take this week?
Me, let's see here. So for the Xfinity series, let's see here. I think we're gonna look at that series this week. Man, spicy take. Man. All right. The 17 goes back to back. Corey Day gets an Xfinity series win.
That'd be big for him. He needs something. He's had a rough go at it here to start. What about you, Blake? What you got going on?
I am going to say you get a first time winner, not just for this season, but ever at Nashville this weekend.
So, first time he's ever won in any NASCAR sanctioned event.
In the Cup Series.
Okay.
Yep. First time Cup winner this weekend.
I'll piggyback off that, and I'll say Corey Heim takes it all the way and gets the win this week. He showed me a lot. I think that he can get it done.
Okay.
Especially if he's able to get into that 11 car somehow, by circumstance. He takes that 11 car over and someone else gets in the 67, I think it is, for 2311.
That would be wild.
That would be like perfect for him. So yeah. I think I would consider that. And Austin, hot, spicy take. Fuel strategy will not come into play this week, and the winner will be inside the top 5. So they'll qualify in the top 5, and therefore they will win the race. So probably a dominant car, kind of like we've seen on the intermediate tracks, especially the Coke 600. Chastain did not come from the top 5, let me tell you. But alrighty, so we got the Pick'em series next, and I feel like I'm just doing Austin's job.
You are, man.
And then I'll be doing Austin's job with editing, because I'm gonna edit the whole thing too.
Hey, you should go to the beach next week.
I'm probably going to bed at 3:00 in the morning, boys. I hope you guys understand that I do a lot for this podcast.
Dude, we appreciate you.
Hey, man.
I'm glad somebody does.
Absolutely, man.
So we had Blake at Charlotte for the Truck Series, caught the win. He picked Corey Heim, which, I mean, if you pick Corey Heim week in and week out, you have a good chance to get the win. I came in second place. I picked Ross Chastain. I picked Ross Chastain on the wrong day. I was able to get a second place finish with that. Kent was able to bring home a third place finish by picking Kyle Busch. And Austin just finished last by picking Grant Enfinger, who finished 6th, right behind Kyle Busch.
That's a good quality on our end.
I think that we nailed it this weekend. I don't think we could have done much better. We were all within the top 5 almost. Well, with Austin being able to pick first, he sent me his pick, thankfully, because he's a good little pistachio. And he's going to pick Tyler Ankrum this week for Nashville. It's a great track for Ankrum, so I cannot blame him for making that choice. But it does leave a couple of good drivers on the table for Kent, who has the second pick.
All right, tell me who I cannot pick.
Yes, sir. I got you. So you cannot pick, obviously, Kyle Busch. You can't pick Daniel Hemrick, and you also cannot pick Carson Hocevar. So there's a lot of good trucks available for you. Obviously, Hocevar's not making a start this week, so
Me, well, if I can pick him, why not? So Corey Heim,
that is a good pick.
after 100 points lead in the regular season standings is insane.
Yeah, it's wild, no doubt. All right, for this week, I come in third. So I cannot pick Chandler Smith, Kyle Busch, or Ross Chastain. Obviously, Kyle Busch would be a great one to have, but I'm also not sweating it too bad about not having him. The funny thing is, I have all my picks written down on this piece of paper, and I'm going to throw out a name here that it's done really good. It's not who I'm going to pick. Matt Mills is really good at this racetrack. Hemrick, the 19. Yeah, I'll pick Hemrick this week. Sorry about that. You get the numbers mixed up over the years. It gets rough. You get old boys, let me tell you. Good thing I can edit that out.
That's right. Well,
All right.
I'll
All
take
right.
Bush if I can.
You say Bush. All right. You can't pick Byron, Enfinger, and Heim, so therefore you are with Kyle Busch this week. So congratulations. That's a good pick to have for, last place. To recap the point standings, Truck Series, Blake is leading with 29 points. Austin is second with Kent, both tied at 25, and I am sitting in the rear view at 21 points for the Truck Series. So, all right, to recap the Xfinity race, Austin got the win by picking William Byron this week. Obviously, won the race. Little Gator was picked by Blake. He was able to get a fourth place finish. Kent finished third with Austin Dillon at P13, and I finished dead last because my driver finished dead last due to a DQ, Sammy Smith. So he ended up P40, I think, P38. So that's a tough right there. So I can't pick Brendan Poole, Austin Hill, or Sammy Smith this week. So there's two guys that I would consider here, and I'm going to take the one that I probably wouldn't pick most of the time. I'm going to go with Sam Mayer this week at Nashville.
All right.
So Kent is next, and he cannot pick Eric Almirola. Dang. Sam Mayer or Austin Dillon. So two of those picks you couldn't have picked anyways. Dillon's not starting, and I picked Mayer. So Almirola's the only one that's really limiting you here. If you need any people that's making a start, let me know, and I can give you some of the drivers.
Yeah, I got that entry list right here. Man, this one's tough. I just because I can't pick them every week, but I can pick them this week. Give me Ross Chastain.
Alrighty, Blake, you would be next. You cannot pick Austin Hill. That's a tough one. You can't pick Jesse Love either, and you cannot pick Justin Allgaier. You have a tough week, my guy. Austin Hill would be a guy that I would would have considered picking.
Let's go Almirola.
Okay, Eric Almirola. That's a safe pick, a veteran driver. And then Austin's list here. Thankfully, my phone's not dead. All right. Cannot pick Chastain, Allgaier, or Byron. And his first guy that he has listed is Austin Hill. That is a steal because I'm pretty sure he has one of the best average finishing positions at Nashville, right beside his teammate, Jesse Love. To recap the Xfinity Series, Austin is in the lead, 36 points. Go figure. Blake is second with 32 points, and me and Kent are tied for last with 31 points. So we're all really close in the Xfinity Series, and all four of our championship drivers are locked in. So that is a series to watch right there. Obviously, for Cup, we do not pick till the day of, but we will recap. Austin was able to get 3 stage points along with the win. Byron was able to get all 3 stages. He obviously didn't win the race, but he was able to finish the race in front of all the other drivers. So therefore, Austin was able to get a great amount of points. Blake finished second with Christopher Bell finishing P8, a guy that kind of stood around the whole entire race, was able to get in that top 10. Tyler Reddick finished P26 due to a speeding penalty on pit road. Hate to see that because he was in the top 10 all day. And Kent finished dead last by cursing my own driver, Alex Bowman, P29, with the Kent curse. So Kent is picking first this week. He cannot pick Hamlin. Can't pick Bell. And you can't pick Bowman. There's some good names that are still available on your list, though. And I think I know who you're going with. So just let me know who you think you would be considered taking this week.
Probably Larson. He's another one of those. If he's on the board, it's hard not to take him really just about anywhere.
And a track that kind of fits into his wheelhouse, too, an intermediate track. I think that's a good pick. Obviously, I would pick second here. This is tough for me. Hamlin would be a pick that I would definitely consider. But, of course, with this not knowing when the baby is going to be delivered, it's kind of tough to tell. So I'd probably be safe, and I'd probably look at Kyle Larson's teammate. I'd probably look at Chase Elliott this week. Nashville's a track that's pretty decent for him, and points-wise, he's been a pretty consecutive driver, so you can probably expect him being in the top 10 somewhere. Alrighty. And then I believe next would be Balaco.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to one guy that I'm considering is Priest, because he has, I can't remember if it was 2021 to 2022 or 2022 to 2023, but he won back-to-back Truck Series starts at Nashville. And then another guy I'm considering is Ross. He usually does pretty well at Nashville.
I hear you on that. And out of the ones that are left, the next one that is on, guys, you never guess who he picked. But the guy that won in Nashville in the fall, his favorite driver, for whatever reason,
Logano.
Joey Logano. So that's the guy that Austin will be considering for that last spot. And honestly, Penske does a pretty decent job at Nashville. I mean, it might be a place that I would consider picking Blaney if Blaney was able to qualify real well. He needs to win a race because all these DNFs are starting to climb up. He's got 5, I think, now.
Yeah.
And still in the top 6 in points, which is wild.
Lots of unpredictability going into the summer stretch, man. Like, you had
the next 3 to 5 races are ridiculous to pick for.
This is going to be a wild pick 'em coming up.
I mean, you got Mexico, you got like 3 of the next 6 are road courses, something like that. Because you got Mexico, you got Sonoma, I think is one of them.
Chicago,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Austin is leading in the points, 44 points, able to get a good gap on us with the nice 3 stage wins and winning overall this week. I am in second with 36. Blake was able to leap over Kent with 32 points, but Kent's still in striking distance of us two. He wins both stages and wins the race. He can jump over and be in the second spot, especially if he picks Larson. That's a good possibility. Alrighty. And after Nashville, boys, what do we got? I know everybody's excited for it.
I think Michigan's the next one.
Yep. And of course,
Mexico City.
Yep. And the Michigan also, ARCA will be running in Michigan too. So that'll be a full weekend of full racing. So, alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end it here. Oh boy, this has been a long one, but we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, being a part of the podcast. Enjoyed and Brayton. And if you're new here, make sure you like on the YouTube channel, subscribe. We actually met at Earnhardt. Shout out to him if he made it this far into the podcast. We met him in the infield, and he subscribed to us on YouTube. So it was great to meet one of the Earnhardts. He said he's not sure how distantly related he is, but he is an Earnhardt, so he counts.
That's right. And Earnhardt follows our podcast, and that's all that matters.
That's right. At the end of the day, when we put our hats up on the hat rack, we can say, hey, we had an Earnhardt follow our podcast. Isn't that cool?
That dude was awesome, man. He really was. I enjoyed it.
We talked for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just randomly asked if there was anybody here, and like sitting there, and we're like, no, man, come ahead and sit down.
Yeah, great.
Take a load off. And we sat there and talked about racing for 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that you got to listen to this podcast and enjoyed it. But the three of us are signing off, and in the words of Austin, whiners are going to whine, and Joe Logano did nothing wrong. Adios.